Chapter 364. In the wilderness, Chinyu's nose and mouth were filled with the rotting smell of fallen leaves. He buried his head in them and used the shadows to rapidly fly away. He used shadow step dozens of times and ran several hundred miles away. In the wilderness, this was considered a safe distance. But when the two divine soul cultivators chased him like maggots, Chinyu knew that he had been locked onto for some reason. Before he could figure out the reason, he could only run as far away as possible in order to avoid being hunted down. Otherwise, with over a dozen divine souls chasing after him, no matter how powerful he was, he would die without a doubt. The reason he killed those two divine souls was because they had been careless, and he also had the might of the copper mirror spirit treasure. It wasn't as simple as it seemed. The skies gradually darkened and night arrived once more. Chinyu stopped. He took out several pills and swallowed them. Then, he sat down cross-legged in the shadows and began to refine the medicinal efficacy. Using shadow step again and again took a tremendous toll on his body. Moreover, Chinyu could faintly feel that the summoned life form hiding in the shadows had weakened by a great deal. It was clear that shadow step mainly relied on its strength. He feared that after using it a few more times, shadow step would fail. Chinyu revealed a look of hesitation. He had the Deva soul in his hands, and after refining it he could immediately become a divine soul. But now, he was only a fine line away from making a breakthrough. Moreover, he had already fled nearly 1,000 miles away. No matter how powerful a divine soul cultivator's soul was, they still might not be able to sense him. Chinyu suppressed the thought of using the Deva soul and focused on refining it. An hour later, he opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. Although he hadn't recovered yet, he couldn't stay here any longer. Just as he was about to use shadow step to leave, his complexion suddenly changed. Bang! The space in front of him collapsed without warning. A woman staggered out. Her luxurious and exquisite dress was now in tatters. The two people's gazes collided and they were both frightened. Chinyu forcefully pulled back his fist. After a moment of astonishment, his complexion became incomparably ugly. This woman was none other than the noble lady from the state of Chu who had been in the flying carriage. Chinyu didn't know how she escaped, but he was sure of one thing: she was about to bring great trouble to him. The noble one also seemed to recognize Chinyu. Looking at his ugly complexion, it wasn't hard to guess what he was thinking. A cold light shined in her eyes. Just as she was about to say something, a deep green jade pendant on her chest suddenly shattered into powder. The noble one's complexion changed, revealing a bit of panic. Then, in the next moment, a terrifying suppression gushed out from the entire space. "Whither are you going to escape? Die obediently, and both of us will be free." With an icy cold voice, 14 figures walked out from the space distortion, each one emitting a powerful aura of the divine soul realm. The cultivator's entire face was covered by a black cloth, revealing only a pair of sharp eyes. As he looked at Chinyu, he was a bit surprised. Then, he chuckled and said, "I never thought you would help us find this little insect. It seems we've saved ourselves some trouble." He waved his hand. The eyes of a divine soul cultivator behind him lit up and he glared at Chinyu. A cold chill gushed out from the depths of his soul. But in the blink of an eye, this cold chill was crushed apart. Shwa, within his soul space, Spirity opened her eyes. She lifted a hand and grasped the air. "Ah!" The divine soul cultivator cried out miserably. Blood gushed out from his nose and mouth as he slumped to the ground. The pupils under the black cloth fiercely shrank. "The two people who chased you before should have died. You little bug, you're really unexpected. Die!" With a loud shout, he stepped forwards and slammed his hand down. His tyrannical soul might have come from some fortuitous encounter, but his cultivation couldn't be faked. Nascent soul was nascent soul, the disparity between it and divine soul was unimaginable. Moreover, he was a dignified 9th-level divine soul. Killing this person would be as easy as flipping his hand. Qin Yu cursed inwardly. If there was a medicine for regret, he would definitely buy 10 of them and then refine the Deva soul without hesitation. What was the point of breaking through? Even if he wanted to refine it now, it was already too late. There was no time to think. A cruel and ruthless aura rushed towards him, causing his heart to shiver. He drew back, wanting to use Shadow Step to escape. As for the noble one of the Chu Empire, "I'm sorry, but you're on your own." But as soon as he moved, Qin Yu discovered that something was wrong. The suppressive strength that flooded the space actually restricted his shadow step. Without any other choice, Qin Yu could only forcefully block this fist. Unfortunately, he lost the initiative. With a stuffy cough, he was forced backwards. His feet plowed a long furrow in the wilderness. The eyes behind the black cloth became even colder. "Junior, I never thought you would have such formidable combat strength. It looks like I really underestimated you." A nascent soul could forcefully block his fist, and his soul was also inconceivably powerful. Even in the land of divinity and demons, this sort of person would be considered a peak-proud son of heaven. But what a pity, he would definitely die today. With a loud shout, the assassin leader approached once more. He lifted his hand and pressed it down. Bang! With a loud explosion, the assassin's eyes widened. Within the tumbling air currents, his body was sent flying backwards and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Cough cough, impossible, just who are you?" The assassin leader shouted out loud, his eyes filled with anger. He had actually been injured in a battle, and his opponent was only a mere nascent soul. "This brat is strange. Don't let him escape. Join hands and kill him." With loud roars, the remaining 12 divine soul cultivators instantly separated, surrounding Qin Yu. They formed hand seals together and runes appeared around them. They spun in the air, condensing into a mountain. Qin Yu's complexion changed. The space around him froze and a boundless pressure surged forwards. It was like a mountain was pressing down on him. Peepah, peepah, his bones trembled and groaned. There was a sudden movement beneath his feet. Qin Yu lowered his head, speechless. The Chu Empire's noble one hugged his thigh, her body shivering. He suddenly had a feeling that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. She looked like she was flat, but he didn't expect her chest to be so thick. As soon as this thought appeared, Qin Yu couldn't help but spit on himself. Did he feel like he was about to die? He actually had such a dirty thought. Above his head, the pressure from the mountain phantom became increasingly great. Qin Yu's complexion immediately changed. He never thought that this suppressing killing technique would become increasingly strong as time passed. If this continued, he would be crushed to pieces sooner or later. His vision began to blur. Traces of warm blood flowed out from his head. He could almost hear the faint cracking sounds coming from the bones in his body. Within his soul space, Spirity had a conflicted expression. After a long time she sighed and turned into a beam of light that fused into Qin Yu's soul. In that moment, the feeling of their souls fusing together was so stimulating that she couldn't help but cough out loud. She restrained her thoughts and began to quietly chant. The young girl's voice turned into simple syllables that reverberated within his soul space. A strange fluctuation appeared with it. After an unknown period of time, a clear shattering sound rang out from within Qin Yu's soul, as if some invisible shackles had been broken. Spirity flew out, her eyes shining with a bright light. She turned and vanished from sight, hiding somewhere unknown. Shwa, Qin Yu opened his eyes. The world in front of him hadn't changed, but it was also different. He revealed a blank look. How did he suddenly make a breakthrough? Could it be because of this mountain peak? Qin Yu felt that something wasn't right, but before he had time to think about it, he was shrouded in an invisible suppression above his head. Rumble, rumble, thunder roared in the skies. Billowing black clouds gushed out from nothingness. The assassin cultivators looked up in astonishment. Their eyes subconsciously widened in disbelief. This was actually the legendary breakthrough on the spot. The leader's eyes shook. When Qin Yu was at the peak of nascent soul, he already had the strength to injure him. Once he made a breakthrough, hurry and kill him. With a loud roar, the leader lifted a hand and pressed down. The entire suppressing killing mountain emitted a thunderous roar. Qin Yu stuffily coughed. His feet sank into the ground, but a cold sneer appeared in his eyes. Although he hadn't crossed tribulation yet, he had already broken through that barrier. His 5 elements nascent souls were transforming, and his strength was rapidly increasing. This killing mountain couldn't kill him. Rumble, within the black clouds, a bolt of thunder came roaring down. It was like a winding lightning flood dragon as it smashed down on Qin Yu. Originally, when the heavenly tribulation was obstructed, it would directly teleport over. However, the killing mountain that the assassins had set up had completely covered the entire space. Therefore, the first to suffer the heavenly tribulation was the suppression mountain peak, or to be more precise, the assassins who set up the suppression technique. Miserable screams filled the air. The 12 divine soul cultivators were sent flying away. Their eyes widened in horror. What kind of heavenly tribulation was this? Its power was actually so great. The leader coughed up blood. His injuries worsened, and his chest felt incredibly tight. However, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the power of this divine soul heavenly tribulation was ridiculously terrifying. Even if this kid was monstrous, he would definitely be heavily injured. At that time, he would naturally be able to kill him. Retreat. Don't go near the heavenly tribulation. With a low growl, the assassin's divine souls hurriedly dodged. Bang! Lightning submerged Qin Yu. The noble one shivered. She subconsciously screamed and hugged the thigh in her arms even tighter. She had no idea that by doing this, she had already given away a great deal of tofu. She had thought that she would die, but being struck to death by heavenly tribulation still surpassed her imagination. How come it doesn't hurt? Could I have already died? The noble one opened her eyes and discovered that the owner of the thigh she was hugging was now like a human-shaped black hole. All of the heavenly tribulation thunder that fell onto him instantly vanished from sight. The two of them were together, and yet she wasn't attacked by the strength of heavenly tribulation at all. After surviving a calamity, the noble one gasped for breath. Her chest heaved up and down, and Qin Yu's complexion couldn't help but turn strange. Luckily, under the cover of the lightning, no one could see his expression. Bang! Before the first bolt of heavenly tribulation disappeared, a second bolt of tribulation thunder ruthlessly descended. The divine soul assassins were all amazed. They wondered just how many things that boy had done to anger the heavens that he would actually draw such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. Their eyes fell onto the ground. The blinding lightning and the endless power of thunder spread out, as if a pool of thunder had appeared out of thin air. Beneath this terrifying power of thunder, even the earth was destroyed into nothingness. As the divine soul assassins watched the two people collapse into a giant pit, their hearts relaxed. This boy and the noble one had definitely perished in body and soul. Strictly speaking, the two of them had died under heavenly tribulation. It had nothing to do with them. Thinking of this, everyone's eyes were filled with joy. After all, the rumors of the Chu Empire's royal bloodline being cursed was something that no one wanted to experience. Bang, bang, tribulation thunder crashed down one after another. The number far surpassed that of ordinary divine soul heavenly tribulation. In the end, the eyes of the Divine Soul assassins began to turn numb. Moreover, the Divine Souls began to worry. With such a large disturbance in the wilderness, if a powerful monster beast were to be drawn in, that would be disastrous. As if sensing the thoughts of the Divine Soul assassins, a strong wind swept past. The thick black clouds in the skies began to dissipate without warning. The heavenly tribulation had ended. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Chapter 365. With loud crackling sounds, the pool of thunder on the ground began to shrink. The lightning gradually submerged into the pit. The leader waved his hand and a Divine Soul cultivator nodded. Without moving, he floated to the edge of the pit like a shadow. After a moment of hesitation, he laid down a curtain of water in front of him and then looked down. Puff, the curtain of water was pierced through. Then, without stopping, it continued to pierce through the cultivator's head. Blood and brain matter sprayed out, causing everyone to jump up in fright. Their eyes widened. That terrifying heavenly tribulation just now hadn't been able to kill him. A cold chill rose up in everyone's hearts. Kill them. The leader angrily roared. But worry began to appear in his eyes. This boy's combat strength was already terrifying when he was at nascent soul, and he was sure to be even more terrifying when he was breaking through. If he fought to the death, then they might have a chance to drag him to death, but if he wanted to run away, they feared they wouldn't be able to stop him. But since they had stepped into today's situation, they might have a chance to live if they did their job well. But if they made a mistake, then they would die without a doubt. Thus, before the roar fell, the leader attacked first. It was unknown what secret technique he used, but a massive amount of blood energy rose up from his body, sucking in and out as if he were breathing. His face suddenly became thinner, and his skin shriveled and wrinkled, as if it had directly dissolved. As his palm fell down, blood energy rapidly rose to the top of his head, condensing into a crimson ghost face that silently roared into the pit. The complexions of the Divine Soul cultivators changed. This was their leader's final trump card. Every time he used it, he would have to pay a tremendous price. Seeing this, they didn't dare to hold anything back. In an instant, the light of supernatural abilities and magic arts submerged the pit. Terrifying fluctuations of strength shook the area. Even if heavenly tribulation can't kill you, you should at least be severely wounded. If we join forces to attack you, you should die. But just as this thought appeared, there was a loud crack above his head. The point between his eyebrows split open and blood wildly gushed out. In the next moment, all the Divine Souls that used supernatural abilities to attack the soul trembled. Most of them vomited blood from their mouths and noses, their faces deathly pale. Bang! 5-colored divine light erupted from the pit, instantly tearing open a crack in the radiant light. Chinyu grabbed the noble one and burst out from the pit. Stop them! The leader screamed. A crazed look appeared on his face. He raised his hand and clawed at the wound between his eyebrows, tearing off a large piece of flesh. Blood gushed out even faster. However, the blood did not drip down his face. Instead, it gathered in the air. The leader used his hand as a brush and the blood as ink to quickly draw in the air. A blood symbol gradually formed. An invisible shackle suddenly appeared and descended upon this space. As the leader's fingertips moved quickly, the shackling power became stronger and stronger. Chinyu frowned. Without pausing, he lifted a hand and thrust out his palm. 5-colored divine light erupted. A divine soul cultivator on the other side revealed a look of panic. But there was no room for him to dodge. In the next moment, he exploded in the air. A single palm strike had killed a middle divine soul powerhouse. This terrifying display caused the pupils of the surrounding soul to constrict violently, and his movements couldn't help but show a trace of hesitation, and this slight hesitation revealed a flaw. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Without hesitation, he used the blood escape art. Blood-red flames burned around him as he grabbed onto the noble one. The two of them shot forwards like a crimson meteor. Their bodies lightened and the feeling of being shackled dispersed. Qin Yu took a deep breath and increased the strength of his palm, causing the noble one to reveal a pained expression. Then, he stepped forwards. Cryptic spatial fluctuations rippled outwards. But in the end, the two of them were sucked in and they vanished from sight. Chase them. We cannot let them escape. Just as the leader's voice fell, the half-drawn blood symbol collapsed. Under the backlash, his field of vision darkened and he toppled backwards. The mountain peak arched upwards like a great dragon raising its head. A 100,000-foot waterfall rushed down, crashing into the pool below and emitting heaven-shaking rumbling sounds. A giant black crocodile lay on the edge of the pool with its eyes closed, waiting for its prey to arrive. Suddenly, space twisted in the midst of the raging waterfall. Just as two figures appeared, they were smashed down by the 100,000-foot water pressure and fell into the pool. The crocodile's eyes flashed open, revealing a look of excitement. Its body violently turned, creating a massive splash of water. Its speed was astonishing, as if it were an arrow piercing through the water. This was because it could smell the scent of blood. It was incomparably delicious. To possess such delicious blood, it was undoubtedly an extremely formidable existence. But, such an existence had actually been smashed down by the waterfall. It must have been severely wounded. If it could swallow it, then it would have a chance to complete its body transformation. Puff! Beneath the roaring waterfall, the muffled sound was extremely inconspicuous. A massive flower of blood rose up from beneath the water, but it was instantly washed away by the current, rapidly spreading outwards. After several more breaths of time, two figures struggled to break through the waves and land on the shore in distress. Qin Yu's shoulder was covered in blood, even revealing pale white bones. If it weren't for the incomparably powerful demon body, he feared his body would have been torn apart by the crocodile just now. Puff! Qin Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as paper. He looked around and then grabbed the noble one and hurried away. Sensing his current state, Qin Yu calmed down a little. Although his injuries were serious, he had a massive number of pills on hand. In addition to the demon body's powerful regenerative abilities, he would be able to recover most of his strength in 2 or 3 days. At that time, he would be safe. The most important thing now was to find a safe place to recuperate. A moment later, Qin Yu barely stimulated the 5-element swords and dug out a temporary cave dwelling in the belly of the mountain. He placed the noble one down and glanced at her. I need to go into seclusion to recover. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. He sat down cross-legged deep in the cave dwelling. He took out 9th province and ordered it to activate the defenses. Then, he took out a pill and swallowed it. Xiong Yuena rubbed her bruised wrist. Her icy cold eyes fell on Qin Yu. She didn't speak and sat down. She didn't know where she was right now, and it was likely that there were people chasing after her outside. If she left this cave, she wouldn't be able to live for too long. But, if she stayed, there might be a chance. Time slowly passed. The cave was incomparably quiet. Xiong Yuena restored her magic power and took out some spirit spring water to drink. She swept her eyes over Qin Yu and frowned. On his shoulder, the part of his body that had been torn apart by the crocodile had already regenerated. One could even see the flesh and blood slowly wriggling as it grew back. At most, it would be restored by tomorrow. What a powerful mortal body. Xiong Yuena suddenly hesitated. Should she stare blankly on as Qin Yu continued to recover from his injuries? Or, what should she do? After hesitating for a long time, the hesitation in Xiong Yuena's eyes was replaced by an icy coldness. She thought back to that Captain Stone who had died. Although the chances were low, she still had to make some preparations. She had to grasp her own destiny in her own hands. Looking carefully, Qin Yu was still cultivating with his eyes closed. He wouldn't wake up for some time. Xiong Yuena flipped her hand and with a flash of light, a white transparent jade bottle appeared in her palm. Inside the bottle were some extremely beautiful little stars. They floated in the air, stretching and contracting from time to time. Their 7 colors were soft and beautiful. Xiong Yuena took a deep breath and pulled out the stopper. There was still a membrane covering the mouth of the bottle, temporarily preventing the little stars from flying out. And inside the bottle stopper, there was actually a pill that was firmly sealed by shackles condensed from runes. At this time, the runes began to collapse and the pill was caught by Xiong Yuena. She opened her mouth and swallowed it. The membrane around the bottle rapidly dimmed and would soon disappear. At that time, these little stars would obtain their freedom. It was unknown what she was thinking, but between Xiong Yuena's calm eyes, there was actually a bit of unwillingness. Suddenly, Qin Yu, who was sitting cross-legged deep within the cave dwelling, opened his eyes. Xiong Yuena was startled, but she discovered that he wasn't looking at her at all. Ah! With a pained roar, the blood vessels in Qin Yu's eyes filled with blood. Then, his entire body began to shiver. The wound caused by the crocodile split open once more and blood wildly gushed out. Kacha, kacha, the sound of bones growing filled his body. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yu's body expanded to twice its original size. Black scales began to grow on the surface of his skin and the nails on his hands and feet turned into sharp claws. Xiong Yuena shivered. She stared at the point between Qin Yu's eyebrows and a single horn that drilled out. All the blood drained from her face. Demonization, with a cry of alarm, the noble daughter of heaven retreated in panic. Her eyes were filled with fear and disgust. In the land of divinity and demons, the great Tao was prosperous. Although the immortal path and demonic path weren't on good terms, they still lived in harmony and some people could even become friends. The immortal path and demonic path could not coexist. This was because the land of divinity and demons had enough resources and territory for the immortal path and demonic path to live and multiply. But there was one type of existence that the immortal path and demonic path could not tolerate. That was the apostles of the extraterrestrial demons. They sold their souls and signed a contract to obtain the strength of a demon, allowing them to become incomparably powerful. But this sort of rapidly rising strength, in some special state or after it reached a certain degree of strength, would become uncontrollable. At that time, a cultivator would lose their consciousness and their body would transform into a demon, becoming the incarnation of a killing machine. Every incarnation of a demon would instinctively swallow a massive number of souls before they died. This was also the reason that every time they appeared, they would cause the lives of others to be plunged into misery and suffering. Whether it was the immortal path, demonic path, or even greater empires, the devil apostles had issued a kill order for them. Once they were discovered to have obtained the strength of a demon, they would be immediately killed. In Xiong Yuena's eyes, Qin Yu was currently transforming into a demon. Although she was retreating, her pale face revealed a deep despair. Demons love to eat human souls, there was no way she could escape. As she thought of the legends, if a soul was swallowed by a demon, it would fall into the abyss and be burned by the infernal flames of hell for all eternity. Unable to transcend, Xiong Yuena's body began to shiver. Paw! The jade bottle fell to the ground. Go! A low and deep roar echoed out from deep within the cave. His trembling voice was filled with pain. Xiong Yuena was stunned. Wasn't it said that when a cultivator transformed into a demon, their consciousness would instantly fall? But at this time, she didn't have time to think about it. She instinctively turned and rushed outwards, not even caring about the dangers of the wilderness. Dying under the jaws of a monster beast was better than having her soul swallowed by a demon. Deep within the cave, billowing demonic energy erupted, submerging Qin Yu's figure. In the pitch-black darkness, all that could be heard was his suppressed roars. On the ground, the membrane at the mouth of the bottle finally disappeared. Those beautiful, delicate little stars regained their freedom. They seemed to have smelled something delicious. They stretched their bodies and flew into the depths of the cave, drilling into the dark demonic aura. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 366. Qin Yu wasn't a devil apostle, so the changes occurring today had nothing to do with his body being demonized. Rather, this was a backlash caused by him breaking into divine soul first and his demon body remaining at the general level. Every inch of his flesh and blood seemed to burn with raging flames, so hot that all his blood seemed to evaporate. Ruthless and destructive emotions drilled out from his heart, making Qin Yu want to destroy everything. From this point of view, the result of the demon body backlash was somewhat similar to the devil apostle's demonization. Unfortunately, a devil apostle that had demonized would be able to continue living for a period of time. But under the demon body's backlash, Qin Yu's body would soon collapse and even his soul would be erased. He tried to resist but was powerless to do so. He could only listen to his heart beat faster and faster until it exploded with a loud bang. The demon god armor had already fused into his body. A demon head appeared behind Qin Yu. It had 2 horns on its head and its eyes were tightly shut. At this time, it seemed to feel pain and its eyebrows furrowed together. At this time, the demon head's eyes suddenly opened, revealing a look of joy. In the next moment, from the surrounding pitch-black demonic energy, small stars began to shine with a weak light. They cheered as they fused into Qin Yu's body. Beneath the black scales, blood vessels bulged out. Qin Yu's eyes widened and he opened his mouth, but no sound came out. These little stars that drilled into his body were like red-hot iron nails that pierced through his body and soul at the same time. Qin Yu had already bitterly endured the pain of the demon body backlash. Now, he couldn't withstand it any longer and his consciousness fell into darkness. Behind him, the demon head's eyes opened completely and a smile seemed to cross its lips. Paw, the nearly demonized mortal body suddenly cracked open. Crimson blood wildly gushed out, flowing to the ground. More and more gathered into small rivulets that spread outwards as if they had a mind of their own. A blue and white spotted snake, its 10-foot-long body tightly wrapped around a small beast. It opened its mouth wide, preparing to swallow the small beast into its belly. But then, it suddenly hissed and its eyes turned red. Throwing away the prey in its mouth, the snake turned and rushed away. Wherever it went, there was a loud rumbling sound and it even knocked down a large tree. Soon, the giant snake passed through the thistles and arrived in front of a stone wall covered with green vines. It violently swept its tail across it, and with a bang, the scene in front of it changed. A cave that was obviously newly dug appeared in front of it. The great snake's crimson eyes fell on the blood that flowed out from the cave. It revealed an inexhaustible greed. It threw itself at the blood, not even noticing that the bloodlines on its body were rapidly growing. Paw, following the blood-colored lines, the snake's body began to collapse. What made people's scalps go numb was that it didn't seem to notice it at all. Right before its head collapsed, it was still swallowing the blood flowing out of the cave. The collapsed body of the giant snake was immersed in the fresh blood and began to dissolve rapidly. Finally, it merged with the blood. Roar! A white tiger tore through the thorns and rushed in. When it saw the disintegrated pieces of the snake's corpse, its scarlet eyes revealed a trace of hesitation. But in the end, it couldn't restrain the restlessness in its heart. It threw itself into the blood and swallowed it. Soon, the white tiger followed in the snake's footsteps. Its body was torn apart by the growing bloodlines, becoming a part of the pool of blood on the ground. And this was just the beginning. The blood emitted a smell that monster beasts couldn't resist. As time passed, the area covered by this smell became increasingly large. Monster beasts arrived here one after another, swallowing the blood on the ground. Finally, they became a part of it, causing the amount of blood to increase. But what was strange was that the blood didn't continue to spread outwards. There seemed to be an invisible strength covering it, causing the blood to form a pool of blood on the ground. Soul space, Qin Yu's soul had its eyes closed in a deep slumber. Two figures stood in front of him, facing each other. One was his partner's soul, Spirity, and the other was a black phantom. This phantom had no facial features and its aura was completely restrained. It was like a real shadow, but it made Spirity feel as if she were facing a great enemy. "Just who are you?" The black phantom smiled. Who knew how it could laugh without a mouth? "I'm not asking you, so why are you asking me? At the very least, you and I are currently master's servants." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Moreover, master's current situation isn't good. He needs our cooperation to overcome this crisis." Spirity frowned. "I don't trust you." The black phantom continued to laugh, but his voice was cold. "Me too." Spirity was silent for a long time. "What do you want me to do?" The black phantom said, "My current strength is too weak and master is in the wilderness where he can encounter danger at any moment. So, I need to borrow a treasure from master's storage ring." He waved his hand. "You are master's partner's soul, so you can freely open master's storage ring." "I am well aware of this." Spirity remained silent. The black phantom frowned. "Hurry up, you don't have time to hesitate." Several figures rapidly moved through the wilderness. One of them suddenly said, "Have you discovered that the surroundings are too quiet? I feel that something isn't right." The complexions of the several people changed. They sensed their surroundings with rapt attention and their eyes became dignified. "Be careful, they might be nearby." The person who spoke paled and his eyes were filled with hatred. If it weren't for that bastard, they would have already completed their mission. These people were the cultivators that had tried to kill the noble people of the Chu Empire. Suddenly, a roar sounded out from in front of them. The eyes of the several cultivators flashed. "Let's go." Schwa, schwa, the few of them quietly approached the source of the sound. Soon, a massive ravaged thicket of thorns appeared in front of them. These black thorns were covered in thorns and were extremely hard and poisonous. In the wilderness, there were very few monster beasts that were willing to touch them. But now, they had been trampled to the ground by a large group of monster beasts. It was clear that there was something that had attracted their attention, causing them to act so crazily. They carefully passed through the thicket of thorns and climbed over the slope in front of them. Even though these people were experienced and knowledgeable, they still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In front of the cave, there was a pool of blood that had appeared out of thin air. Several monster beasts were soaking in this pool, gulping down large mouthfuls of blood. But often, after a few mouthfuls, their bodies would break apart and melt into the blood pool, becoming a part of it. As the several people were panic-stricken, there was a loud rumbling sound behind them. A group of jade rhinoceroses were rampaging towards them. Looking behind them, they could see that they had created a flat road in the wilderness. This group of savage and cruel jade rhinoceroses was considered an extremely powerful race even in the wilderness. In particular, when they moved in groups, there were very few monster beasts that were willing to provoke them. Even the group of divine soul cultivators were frightened. If they were struck by the jade rhinoceroses, even if they didn't die they would still lose half their lives. But what startled the divine soul cultivators was that these rhinoceroses didn't seem to notice these human cultivators that they normally hated the most. Without even glancing at them, they roared and rushed towards the blood pool. Gudung, gudung, the sound of swallowing was incomparably loud. The group of jade rhinoceroses gulped down the blood pool and the blood pool visibly decreased. Soon, a horrifying scene occurred. Look at the bloodlines on their bodies. A pursuing cultivator cried out in alarm. In truth, there was no need for him to say anything. Everyone had already noticed the changes occurring on the jade rhinoceroses. More and more bloodlines appeared on their bodies until they covered their entire bodies. Suddenly, the right hind leg of a jade rhinoceros exploded. Its massive body staggered, but it didn't seem to feel anything as it continued to swallow the blood. Then, in the next 3 minutes, all of the jade rhinoceroses fell to the ground. Even their jade-like horns melted away into the blood. The blood pool that had dropped a great deal was soon restored to its original state. In fact, it was even deeper and larger than before. After all, this group of jade rhinoceroses had filled in their bodies. Gudong, it was unknown who gulped, but the sound was extremely clear in the silence. We should leave. Although this was what he said, there was a hint of reluctance in his eyes. The leader's heart chilled. He thought of a terrifying possibility. Just as he was about to speak, a figure suddenly rushed out. Get out of here. All of you get out of here. Mine, it's all mine. Put on, this person dove into the blood pool. After drinking several mouthfuls, an expression of incomparable enjoyment appeared on his face. Blood lines rapidly appeared, spreading over his body. 11. What are you doing? Hurry and come back. A divine soul cultivator prepared to save him. The leader shouted out, Stop. Do you want to die? Come back with me. As everyone reacted, they all revealed looks of fear. They never thought that this blood water would be similarly effective against cultivators. After they retreated far away, the divine soul cultivator in the blood pool seemed to have become drunk. His entire body floated in the water. Then, just like the monster beasts, he disintegrated into pieces and disappeared. This was far more impactful than the death of the monster beasts. The cultivators paled and their chests tumbled. The leader sucked in a deep breath. Check it. If it has nothing to do with the target, we will leave immediately. The group of divine soul cultivators scattered. They soon discovered something. Not too far away from the cave entrance, they found the corner of a piece of clothing. This gorgeous color and texture, it was the skirt of Her Highness. The leader paled. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want to cross paths with this terrifying blood pool. But now, it seemed he had no other choice. His eyes swept over the panic-stricken crowd. He said in a low voice, Everyone, you and I are following orders. If an accident occurs, the result will still be death. And although this blood pool is strange, if you and I rush in, we might still have a chance. This was the truth. The panic-stricken divine soul cultivators all had incomparably ugly complexions, but they were much calmer. The leader swept his eyes around. Number 4, Number 9, the two of you go and investigate the cave. Remember to be careful and don't look at that blood pool. The two chosen were both trusted subordinates. They knew that at this time, the leader could only let them take the risk. They clenched their teeth and nodded. Number 4 was in front and Number 9 was behind. The two of them separated by 20 feet and flew in one after the other. Like this, if an accident occurred, the people behind could still rescue them. Seeing the two of them fly into the cave, everyone anxiously waited. It was so quiet that they could only hear their increasingly fierce heartbeats. Ah! A pitiful scream echoed out. A figure burst out. It was number 9. Chapter 367. Whoosh! A tentacle tore through the air, wrapping around number 9. He cried out for help but could only be pulled into the cave. Outside, the leader who saw this felt as if he had fallen into an icy lake, his blood nearly freezing over. Demonic transformation, the leader was the first to regain his composure. His horizons were the highest and he remembered an ancient scroll he had inadvertently read. There was once a secret about the devil apostles. When a devil apostle's strength reached a certain limit, there was a chance that they would transform into the mortal body of a devil that descended. Although the scene in front of them was different from what was written, the panic-stricken leader was already convinced. Since a devil had descended here, that highness had likely perished. In other words, their mission had already been completed. Let's go. You and I don't have the qualifications to meddle in matters here. We will report this matter to our superiors and the lords will soon arrive. The leader turned and left. The divine souls under him hurriedly followed, all of them feeling relieved. Within his soul space, Spirity had an ugly complexion. You did that on purpose. The shadow smiled. No, it was just a moment of carelessness that allowed that person to escape. He turned his head. You need to make a decision quickly. If those people escape, I fear there will be problems. Spirity sucked in a deep breath. All right, I promise you. But if you do anything improper, I will definitely kill you. The shadow bowed. You can rest assured of this. Shwa, the shadow vanished from sight. In the next moment, deep within the cave, demonic energy billowed. Beneath Qin Yu's demon incarnation, a shadow stepped out, rapidly condensing into reality. He had a black short sword in his left hand and a simple bronze mirror in his right. Behind him was a large black flag. His appearance was neither fish nor fowl, as if he were a character on a stage. The creature that was summoned by Qin Yu looked down and said, Master's current appearance is quite domineering. After he finished speaking, he chuckled several times and vanished from sight. The summoned life form had given Qin Yu the ability to move, so it was much easier for him to use it himself. With several flashes, he caught up to the several cultivators that were trying to escape. How nostalgic! With a soft sigh, filled with endless nostalgia, the summoned life form vanished. In the next moment, heads shot into the skies. The headless corpses on the ground took several steps forwards before crashing to the ground. Enemy attack! The leader bellowed in hindsight. His pupils violently constricted, because from start to finish, he hadn't sensed the slightest bit of abnormality. If the enemy's target was him. Thinking of this, the leader's forehead was instantly covered in beads of sweat. 17 divine souls joined forces to step into the wilderness. They originally thought that they would be able to hunt down Qin Yu with a 90% success rate, but who would have imagined that things would develop into such a situation today? Including the leader, there were only 7 people left. No, there were only 6 now. At this time, there was a dull popping sound. The head of a divine soul that had been waiting in formation was sent tumbling far away. His face was filled with shock and disbelief. Puff, another divine soul had his head cut off. This time, everyone finally saw that flash of black, but its speed was too fast, and it appeared without the slightest warning. The leader's scalp went numb as he growled, "Split up and run." Whoosh! He was the first to shoot out, and the 3 people beside him immediately reacted, each choosing a direction and rushing away. He couldn't care less about safety now. The leader used teleportation and disappeared in the ripples of space. After the teleportation was completed, the leader let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that the terrifying assassin hadn't chosen him as his target. Dazzling lights flashed in front of him and the familiar feeling of space being torn apart rapidly disappeared. The leader knew that his teleportation was about to end. He took a deep breath and prepared himself. The moment the teleportation was completed, he would use it to escape once more. But the leader didn't have a chance to continue teleporting. He looked down at the black dagger that had pierced through his heart. As blood gushed out, he finally saw who had killed him. How come this person doesn't have a face? Where is my soul? Why can't I run away? All sorts of chaotic thoughts flashed through his mind before he fell into complete darkness. The summoned life form slowly drew out the 100 nether sword. As it moved, the soul-burying flag behind it swayed without any wind. Soul fragments flew out from the corpse, sucked into it. I was a second slower than I expected. Although these things are good, if I want to use them smoothly I'll have to find a chance to refine them. But right now, there are more important matters to attend to. Demon body backlash. I'm really looking forward to seeing just what will happen in the end. Perhaps this little master of mine will earn a great deal again. How envious. Shwa, the summoned life form vanished. After several breaths of time, it appeared once more, floating above the blood pond. It looked down and then sat down cross-legged. The 100 nether sword and copper mirror had been put away somewhere, and its hands began to form hand seals. As it moved, the temperature of the blood pond rapidly rose until it began to boil. Countless bubbles tumbled and popped, emitting gurgling sounds. Rich blood energy rose up, surrounding the summoned life form and condensing into blood shadows. After they appeared, they knelt down on one knee, respectful and subservient. Soon, there were 12 blood shadows. The summoned life form withdrew its hand seals and said in an icy cold voice, "Go and attract more monster beasts here. I want the surrounding 10,000 miles of this wilderness to become a land of death." The 12 blood shadows silently rose up. They spread out in 12 different directions and howled into the distance. The summoned life form thought out loud. I'll be very busy after this. If I only rely on the blood pond, I fear I won't be able to keep up. It lifted a hand and pointed down. Massive droplets of blood floated in the air, condensing into blood-red pearls. That's about it. The summoned life form suddenly turned its head. You've been watching for so long. What did you see? Shwa, Spirity's phantom, appeared. Her eyes were dignified. Just who are you? The summoned life form smiled. This question is quite familiar. Then, who are you? A terrifying aura surged around Spirity's phantom. This strength was far greater than what she had displayed before. The summoned life form continued to smile. Partner soul, are you sure you want to fight me at this time? Spirity frowned. Put away your hostility. I was summoned here by the Little Master, so our fates have merged together. I have no intentions of harming the Little Master, at least not right now. It added these superfluous words, but it actually caused Spirity's complexion to relax. She drew back her aura, looked deeply at the summoned life form, and then vanished from sight. The summoned life form wiped away the non-existent cold sweat on its forehead. It muttered to itself, "This little girl isn't ordinary at all. Moreover, this feeling, I feel like I've met her before. Have I met her before? I've met her before and she still hasn't vanished into thin air. She's definitely not someone to be provoked. Little Master, I'm becoming increasingly curious about you." And at this time, the first monster beast arrived. This was an ape. Its entire body was covered in fiery red fur. As it roared, the summoned life form flicked a finger. "Be a good boy, Uncle will treat you to some candy." A bead of blood fell into the ape's mouth. Of course, this wasn't an appropriate description, because the bead of blood tore open the ape's lips and broke 2 of its teeth before breaking in. The ape howled in pain. But soon, its eyes blurred and it fell to the ground. Blood-red lines began to grow on its body. The second demonic beast was a large bird with a wingspan of 17 to 18 meters. Little bird, be a good boy and open your mouth. Uncle will give you some candy. A third monster beast followed closely behind, followed by a fourth, a fifth. At this time, if someone were to stand 100,000 feet in the skies and look down upon this wilderness, they would discover that it was like a boiling pot. Countless demonic beasts gathered from all directions, roaring and roaring madly. They smashed the ancient trees, broke the rivers, and sliced the mountains in half. And in every direction, there was a blood shadow moving about. The aura they emitted caused the monster beasts to go crazy. Be a good boy and eat some candy. Don't be in such a hurry, everyone has a share. Open your mouth. I'm talking to you. What are you in such a hurry for? I'll give this one to you. The summoned life form rambled on, occasionally chuckling in a low voice. Beneath it were monster beasts that were collapsing or on the verge of collapsing. Endless amounts of blood gathered from all directions. The current blood pond was over 1,000 feet long and wide. It was nearly a blood-red lake. At this time, a strange fluctuation arrived. In the skies above the blood lake, the phantom of an altar appeared. The summoned life form looked up, a bit of doubt in its voice. 100,000 portions of blood essence is enough to form a projection. Your appetite seems to be much smaller than before. It seemed to be deep in thought. After several breaths of time, it chuckled. A mere 100,000 portions of blood essence is enough to offset the demon body's backlash. That's far less than I expected. It seems I can try to obtain more. It formed hand seals and the 12 blood shadows simultaneously sensed something. With a sharp cry, they flew towards an even larger area. They needed to attract more monster beasts. 20,000 miles, 30,000 miles, 40,000 miles. 100,000 miles. In the wilderness of 100,000 miles, all the monster beasts were seething with excitement. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count them all. As time passed, the blood lake continued to expand. 2,000 feet. Not enough, not enough. Not enough. 3,000 feet. Continue, continue. I want more. 4,000 feet. A mere 400,000 portions of blood essence is far, far too little. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the area of the blood lake finally reached an astonishing 10,000 feet. And at this time, there was no longer a single monster beast within 100,000 miles. Even further away, the monster beasts had sensed a terrifying aura and had already fled far away. It could be said that with the blood lake as the center, there were no longer any monster beasts within 100,000 miles of the wilderness. Black clouds appeared in the skies, causing the skies to darken. Howling winds appeared out of nowhere, causing the air to howl. At this time, the infernal energy around the blood lake was so rich that if it were someone with a slightly weaker soul cultivation, their soul would have directly perished. This was because not only was there 1,000,000 portions of blood essence gathered here, but there were also the remnant souls and resentment of countless monster beasts. Above the blood lake, the blood altar constantly condensed as more and more blood essence was added to it. Now, it was almost tangible. There was even a pair of eyes that appeared on the surface of the altar. At this time, the eyes on the altar slowly opened. Oh. For thy sacrifice, receive the reward, bestow upon thee the power of the burning heavens. A simple syllable echoed between the heavens and earth. In the next moment, the entire 10,000-foot blood lake began to shrink without warning. Finally, it turned into a blood crystal the size of a grain of rice that flew into the altar and vanished. Then, the entire altar began to fade. Like a shadow in the water, it soon vanished from sight. All of the blood essence and infernal energy in the air also disappeared, as if everything that happened before had been nothing but an illusion. The summoned life form was amazed. A mere 1,000,000 portions of blood essence was actually bestowed with the power of the burning heavens. What has happened to this world? Why is it so hard to see through? No matter what, in short, today's transaction was a great profit. Schwa, it turned and vanished from sight. #####O. Chapter 368. Under the sky, a black shadow whizzed past. The space around it was slightly distorted, absorbing all the energy fluctuations without making the slightest sound. However, this black shadow revealed a huge eye that was filled with rage. As the new monarch of the monster race, Dodonata had his own name and title. He was revered as the Flying Heavenly King and obtained a territory of 300,000 miles. After it broke through into the king rank, it entered into closed-door cultivation to consolidate its cultivation. Under normal circumstances, this closed-door cultivation would last for 100 years, but after merely 13 years, it had no choice but to stop cultivating. After killing and devouring 2 subordinates that dared to disturb him, Dodonata was finally in the mood to figure out just what was going on. Then, the Flying Sky King was completely enraged. As a newly ascended king, it only had a territory of 300,000 kilometers. Now, 1/3 of its territory had been swept clean. All of the monster beasts under his command disappeared. Although Dodonata didn't care about these ordinary monster beasts, this was related to the face of a king. Dodonata swore that no matter who did this, they would have to pay a sufficient price. The dignity of a monster beast king would not tolerate any provocation. It flew out of seclusion and sped all the way here. After entering the warning zone, Dodonata's killing intent grew heavier and heavier. Originally, it thought that its subordinate was exaggerating the truth, but along the way, it really did not see a single demonic beast. They really had all disappeared. At the same time, Dodonata also began to feel some fear. To be able to accomplish this in just a few days, this enemy was absolutely no trifling matter. But the more it was like this, the more his enemies had to die. This was the first challenge he faced after becoming a king. He had to deal with it cleanly and beautifully. Only then could he let those old fellows of his clan know that he, Dodonata, was a true king. Aura fluctuations. A sharp light flashed in Dodonata's eyes. His massive body suddenly vanished and a cold and gloomy youth appeared. He had a pair of wings growing out of his back. Although they were retracted, each feather shined with a metallic luster beneath the sunlight, causing one to feel a bone-chilling chill. The wings of the Flying Heavenly King were not only used for flight. Schwa, with a few flashes, the soaring Heavenly King appeared on an ancient tree. With a single glance, he saw the completely destroyed brambles in the distance. Along the way, the tracks left behind by the demonic beasts also led to this place. That's right. An ominous glint flashed in the Flying Sky King's eyes as he flapped his wings. A gust of wind howled and condensed into countless phantom feathers. Each of them was like a sharp arrow released from a bow as they whizzed towards the mountain. As a demonic beast king, his intelligence was not inferior to that of a human. Since his opponent was likely to be very strong, he would naturally strike first to gain the upper hand. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain was covered by the phantom feathers. It seemed to be quiet for a second, and then with a deep rumbling sound, the mountain collapsed into countless pieces of rubble, rolling in all directions. Confusion appeared in the soaring Sky King's eyes. The aura he had sensed earlier had already disappeared. Could it be that the mysterious enemy had already been killed? At this moment, its pupils suddenly shrank, and with a flap of its wings, it disappeared on the spot. The next moment, a fist covered in scales bombarded the air. The muffled sound was like thunder. Ripples appeared in space, and countless tiny cracks appeared, like cold and gloomy eyes opening one after another. The flying Sky King gasped, "Demon." His eyes revealed a dignified look, and then he realized something. No wonder it could exterminate all the demonic beasts within a 100,000-mile radius. It was actually the power of the evil demon. But soon, the flying Sky King's eyes filled with icy killing intent. It wasn't just the immortal and demonic paths, but the great empires and monster beasts also loathed the evil demon. After all, a demon that had lost its consciousness and only knew how to kill and destroy didn't care whether it killed humans or monster beasts. The flying Sky King licked his lips. Although demons were terrifying, they didn't have any consciousness and only relied on their instincts. With his king's step strength, killing them wasn't difficult at all. Killing a demon was enough to cause Dodonata's reputation to resound throughout the entire monster beast race. Then, with your blood and death, you will become the stepping stone for me to establish my dignity. The flying Sky King instantly vanished. He appeared behind the demon and punched out. Demons had extremely powerful mortal bodies. Even if they were severely wounded, they could still restore themselves in a short period of time. In order to truly kill them, one had to destroy the core hidden within the demon's heart. Die! You mindless killing machine. The flying Sky King had a confident look in his eyes. But at this time, a deep roar echoed in his ears. This roar seemed to reach straight into his heart, carrying with it a soul-shaking strength. The flying Sky King's movements paused. The demon in front of him suddenly shrank, dodging by a hair's breadth. The demon turned around and a pair of icy cold eyes locked onto him. Dodonata's heart skipped a beat. These eyes, the demon had lost its consciousness and was in a cruel and bloodthirsty state. How could it possibly have such calm eyes? No, this wasn't an ordinary transformed demon. It was the body of an abyssal demon that had descended. It was no wonder that all the monster beasts within 100,000 miles had vanished. In order to smoothly descend, the demon must have used some terrifying secret technique. Thinking of this, Dodonata's blood nearly froze over. In the land of divinity and demons, all living beings loathed and hated the power of the abyss. But even after countless years, the demon apostles still existed. Just this point alone was enough to prove just how terrifying the power of the abyss was. In the legends, a true demon had a terrifying strength comparable to a calamity immortal. Even if it was only an avatar, it could still possess the greatest combat strength below the calamity immortal realm. That was the strongest strength below the calamity immortal realm, a strength that could crush all blue seas. Although monster beast kings were powerful and could easily cut down human blue seas once they made a breakthrough, Dodonata was only a king who had only been promoted for a dozen some years. He was far from having the strength to contend with a demon avatar. Run! At this moment, this was the only thought in Dodonata's mind. He didn't feel it was shameful. Even the strongest king of his race might not be able to resist a demon avatar. It was normal for him to choose to run away. Moreover, as long as he lived, news of the demon avatar could be transmitted to the high-level figures of his race at the fastest speed possible. Only then would they be able to reduce the losses of the entire race. After all, this was the wilderness, the territory of the monster beasts. Dodonata turned and left. His wings spread open. He didn't dare to directly teleport away, because the strength of the demon was far too terrifying. Who knew whether or not he had the ability to interfere with teleportation? And if there was an accident during the teleportation, it would be hard for him not to die. Luckily, Dodonata was known as the Flying Heavenly King, so his speed wasn't a problem. In just several breaths of time, he could escape to a safe distance and then teleport away. He lifted his wings and fell down. Faint fluctuations appeared in the space around the Flying Heavenly King. This was one of his talent abilities. He could stir up spatial ripples and counteract all resistance. In this state, his flight was infinitely close to being in a vacuum and his speed would reach the limit. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared. The flying heavenly king was stunned for a moment before fear crept into his heart. This demon actually had a helper. Luckily, he reacted quickly and immediately fled as soon as he sensed something was wrong, otherwise he really might have died here today. The black shadow held a simple bronze mirror in his right hand. It suddenly rose up and a beam of light instantly struck the flying heavenly king. Then, this king of the monster beast's eyes widened, revealing endless fear. He discovered that he couldn't move. A strange strength had imprisoned his soul. Although he could feel that this strength would collapse in the blink of an eye, in a slaughter, a tenth of a breath of time was more than enough to kill his opponent. As he thought, that demon had arrived. The flying heavenly king crazily struggled, his soul rioting. But, he still wasn't able to break through the shackles on his soul before the demon arrived. Bang! The demon's fist smashed open his chest. His strong and powerful heart was easily crushed under the claws. Shwa, a translucent miniature version of the flying heavenly king, escaped from his dead mortal body. Monster beast kings could condense their souls. Although they were a boundary slower than humans, their souls were still nourished by their powerful mortal bodies and became even more formidable. You aren't a descending demon. Although this fist tore apart his mortal body, it also allowed Dodonata to clearly see the demon's strength. If this was a true abyssal demon avatar, then the power of rules contained within this fist was enough to instantly annihilate his soul. Dodonata was incomparably regretful and angry. He had been frightened by his own actions, otherwise how could his mortal body have been so easily destroyed? And with his strength, he might even have had the chance to kill his enemy. But now, it was too late. All that was left over was his soul. He had to immediately flee and find a new mortal body to seize. Damned demon, I swear I will kill you. With a hateful roar, the wings on Dodonata's soul fiercely slammed down. Puff! With a dull sound, as if a leather bag of water had been pierced through, Dodonata's soul looked down in a daze at the black dagger that had pierced through him. The other end of the dagger was grasped in the hand of a faceless life form. Then, endless pain and weakness instantly tore apart his consciousness. Bang! Dodonata's soul broke into countless pieces that were absorbed by the soul-burying flag. The pitch-black flag became even darker, as if it had a metallic texture to it. The demon roared out loud and Dodonata's corpse rapidly withered away. Rich blood energy howled out, all of it pouring into his body. The black scales, the screeches on his head, the blood-red eyes, all of this was like frost beneath the blazing sun, rapidly disappearing from sight. With the blood essence of a monster beast king as a sacrifice, the backlash of the demon body finally faded away. Qin Yu's complexion was pale. With a thought, the demon god armor automatically appeared and transformed into a black robe. His eyes fell, deep and dignified. The summoned life form bowed. I had no choice. I ask Master to forgive me. The sword, bronze mirror, and black flag are all here. He didn't have a face, so he naturally couldn't make an expression. But, his voice was sincere. Qin Yu was silent for a long time. Then, he said, since it suits you, keep it. He waved his hand, ending the conversation. The summoned life form seemed a bit surprised but relaxed. It respectfully nodded. Without any movement, the three treasures vanished and it stepped forwards, fusing into Qin Yu's shadow. Within Qin Yu's soul space, Spirity frowned. She hesitated, but in the end she didn't say anything. She turned and vanished. Shwa ripples appeared in space. Qin Yu stepped in and directly teleported away. 2 hours later, Qin Yu stepped out from the space. His face was much paler than before. His divine sense swept out, sensing even the slightest movement within 1,000 miles. He didn't sense any danger. He stepped forwards and the ground rippled like a lake, swallowing up his figure. ####. Chapter 369. Deep underground, an invisible strength pushed apart the earth, forming a 1,000-foot space. Qin sat down cross-legged and carefully sensed the situation within his body. After a long time, he exhaled softly and pondered. Even though he had lost consciousness, he was still aware of everything that had happened through his partner's spirit. During the South Shine Nation's youth alchemy competition, he had used his own blood essence to refine a super demon puppet pill to summon that strange life form. It was clear that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. It seemed to have a deep understanding of the demon body backlash and even the descending blood altar. What kind of divine being was it? Qin didn't ask anything, but that didn't mean he wasn't curious. Rather, he knew that the summoned life form wouldn't tell him, so he chose to remain silent. But since he had summoned a creature to help him overcome the backlash of the demon body and even obtained a reward from the blood altar, then he shouldn't have any ill intentions towards him for the time being. Then let's talk about the future in the future. There's no point in being confused and conflicted now. Qin suppressed these thoughts. He lifted a hand and spread out his fingers. White, black, blue, red, and yellow divine light flowed about, releasing a powerful aura. He was now at the divine soul realm. Moreover, because his background was deep and his foundation was incomparably solid, after he broke through, he would directly reach the second level of divine soul. This was the basic combat strength of 200 flood dragons. It had to be known that when an ordinary cultivator broke into divine soul, it was extremely rare for them to have a combat strength of 50 flood dragons. They needed to use their soul to sense the rules of the world in order to rapidly increase their strength in a short period of time, finally surpassing 100 flood dragons in order to stabilize their boundary. Qin directly obtained a combat strength of 200 flood dragons and there would be a period of explosive growth in his combat strength. Once he stabilized his divine soul boundary, he would have at least 300 to 400 flood dragons. This was the astonishing power of a profound foundation. Qin clenched his fists. As he felt the powerful strength rushing through his body, he couldn't help but smile. He had already figured out how to calculate his combat power. Based on the basic combat power of 200 flood dragons, if the 5 elements' nascent souls were superimposed 10 times, it would be 2,000 flood dragons. If the 5 elements sword was superimposed 4 times, it would be 8,000 flood dragons. 8,000 flood dragons was equivalent to the strength of 8 dragons. This was already within the scope of the Blue Sea realm. Moreover, Qin still had the strength of the demon body that he hadn't used yet. He didn't know much about the demon body. But perhaps it was because he had suffered a backlash, or perhaps it was because the demon body had broken through to a certain boundary, but he naturally obtained some information about the demon body. For example, as a physical body, one's combat strength could be stacked by 2 times at the general rank, 4 times at the marshal rank, and 6 times at the king rank. If he attacked with his full strength, then with the power of his blood vitality, his combat strength would rise to 48 dragons. This was already comparable to a cultivator that had just broken into the Blue Sea realm. But this wasn't his limit. His thoughts stirred and his heart began to vigorously beat, pushing his blood to rapidly revolve in his body. The temperature rose rapidly, like lava flowing through his veins. This was the power of the burning heavens that the blood altar phantom had bestowed upon him after swallowing 1,000,000 portions of blood essence. This power did not truly incinerate the heavens and earth. Instead, it burned the cultivator's own blood and chi in exchange for explosive power. Once the power of the burning heavens was galvanized, even if it wasn't truly displayed, Qin could still feel its limits. It could double the base combat strength of 48 dragons. Since it was called burning the heavens, it was naturally not as simple as just burning one's blood and chi. If one were to truly go all out in a life or death situation, after burning one's blood, one could ignite one's arcane energy a second time. At the cost of burning one's arcane energy, one's cultivation would fall, but one's battle prowess would be doubled once again. After arcane ignition was life ignition. Using one's own lifespan as a sacrifice, one's combat strength would double for the third time. 48 dragons doubled to 96 dragons, then doubled to 192 dragons, and then doubled again to a horrifying 384 dragons. A combat strength of 300 dragons was a revered blue sea. As strong as Ming Xiyuan, Yuan Tiangang, and even the South Shine Nation's exalted Yunilan only had a combat strength of 300 to 400 dragons. If Qin Yu were to go all out right now and erupt with combat strength for a short period of time, he wouldn't be any weaker than them. Of course, a pure comparison of combat strength didn't mean that Qin Yu had the strength to fight them head-on. Upon reaching the Blue Sea realm, one's perception of the world's rules was the decisive factor. Otherwise, even if one had a combat strength of 1,000 dragons, if they were restricted by the power of the rules and could only display 10% of their strength, all that awaited them was death. Moreover, the power of the burning heavens that burned one's blood, arcane ignition, and life ignition wasn't easy to withstand. If Qin Yu truly used it for several breaths of time, he would have to pay an extremely heavy price. Thus, this was a life-saving technique. He could only grit his teeth and use it in a hopeless situation. Qin Yu scattered the power of the burning heavens. The temperature of his blood rapidly dropped. He frowned. Although the power of the burning heavens was powerful, it was best not to use it. After expending so much effort to sacrifice 1,000,000 portions of blood essence, he originally thought that he would have a heaven-shaking harvest. But, he never imagined that what he obtained would be a seemingly amazing but actually impractical chicken ribs. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Whatever. To be able to survive the backlash of the demon body was already a stroke of good fortune. He couldn't ask for anything more. But, the summoned life form in the shadow actually thought that its efforts were being looked down upon. It curled its lips and appeared. It cupped its hands together and said, "Little master, you are mistaken." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. "What did you say?" The summoned life form respectfully said, "Little master hasn't been in this world for long, so you don't understand how difficult it is to superimpose one's combat strength. I can explain it to you." It paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Take little master as an example. If you practice a certain cultivation method and condense a 5-element nascent soul, you can obtain 10 times your combat strength. With the 5-element nascent souls as the foundation, you can use the 5-element secret arts to increase your combat strength by 4 times. If you cultivate the demon body, you can increase your combat strength by 6 times at the commander level. Finally, there is the power of the burning heavens. On the surface, it seems that the price to pay for the power of the burning heavens is the greatest, but the increase in combat strength is actually the smallest. But, there is something that little master must understand, and that is that there are levels to superimpose one's combat strength. There are many ways to superimpose low levels of combat strength, but if you want to continue doing so, you must grasp a higher level ability, otherwise there will be no effect. Little Master's cultivation method is lower than the secret arts, lower than the mortal body, and lower than the power of the burning heavens. Moreover, there is one more point, and that is that as more and more layers are superimposed, the increase in combat strength will also decrease. This is the imprisonment of the world's rules. They will not allow anyone's combat strength to wildly increase without limit. Qin Yu nodded. There were countless supreme elders in the land of divinity and demons and all sorts of ancient inheritances. There were bound to be many methods to increase one's combat strength. If there was no limit and one could endlessly superimpose one's combat strength, the consequences would be unimaginable. Suddenly, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. You are saying that the power of the burning heavens is a high-level method of superimposing one's combat strength. Even after being restricted by the world, it can still double its strength. That is already extremely rare. The summoned life form smiled. Little Master, there is still one thing you are not correct about. The power of the burning heavens is not a simple high-level method, but one of the highest-level methods of superimposing one's combat strength in this world. No matter what sort of superimposing method you master in the future, it will always be beneath the power of the burning heavens. Moreover, no matter how many layers of superimposing your combat strength Little Master obtains in the future, the degree of superimposing the power of the burning heavens will not decrease in the least. Qin Yu's complexion finally changed. The highest level would not decrease. Just these 2 points were enough to prove just how formidable the power of the burning heavens was. Moreover, with Qin Yu's current cultivation, it was true that he couldn't withstand burning his blood, magic, and life. But in the future, once his cultivation reached a certain level, he might be able to easily use it. And at that time, Qin Yu's combat strength would surely shake the heavens and earth. Only then would the true terror of the power of the burning heavens be revealed. The summoned life form bowed. After explaining everything, it turned and left, hiding its achievements and fame. But, Qin Yu understood its meaning. It wasn't that I didn't do a good job, but that you didn't have the eyesight to see it and you didn't have the qualifications to use it. You can't blame me. This strange summoned life form. Qin Yu was a bit embarrassed. He didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, but he relaxed a bit. At the very least, it didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Several days later, an Earth attribute monster beast drilled into the underground space. Qin Yu's plans to stabilize his boundary were ruined and he hurriedly killed it. Before more Earth attribute monster beasts rushed over, Qin Yu shot into the skies. In the end, this was the wilderness, there was no place safe. After a brief hesitation, he decided not to stay any longer. It wouldn't be too late to go into seclusion after returning to the human-controlled territories. He took out a satellite handphone from his storage ring and poured magic power into it to turn it on. This was truly worthy of being an item of the South Shine Nation. It was actually able to find a signal and determine his position. After comparing it to a map, Qin Yu put away the satellite handphone and flew away. In the wilderness, teleportation was a dangerous matter. After all, no one knew where they would land. Thus, unless there was no other choice, it was best not to wander around. As Qin Yu was flying towards the location he chose, in the distant Qi Empire. In the Golden Palace, the Qi Emperor sat on his dragon throne with a dignified expression. The opening of the Infinite Realm has been delayed for so long, there must have been some accident. Pass down a decree to the disciples of the imperial family. They must pay more attention. In another palace, over a dozen young cultivators were gathered. Each one of them had an extraordinary aura and their eyes surged with pride and confidence. The sect has issued a secret order. The Infinite Realm has already opened. In at most a month, you and I will be able to enter. The one who spoke was a white-clothed youth. His eyes were like stars and his aura was calm and restrained, giving off an unfathomable feeling. This is great. I've waited for far too long. This day has finally arrived. The Infinite Realm is the greatest lucky chance beneath the blue sea. If we can obtain some harvests, our future cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort. Immediately prepare yourselves. We will enter the Infinite Realm in a month and compete for good fortune. The white-clothed youth looked at the excited junior apprentice brothers and sisters. The corners of his lips curved up in a smile. He turned and said, "Junior apprentice sister Ning Ling, your talent is extraordinary and you managed to break through to Divine Soul in such a short period of time. Your future achievements are limitless. But, your current strength is still too weak. After entering the infinite realm, follow me and you will be fine. Ningling hesitated for a moment. She restrained her smile and said, "Thank you, senior apprentice brother Yubai." Yubai faintly smiled. He could feel that Ningling was faintly resisting him. This wasn't anything at all. He was confident he could move her heart, and the infinite realm was the best chance. To the side, a female immortal sect cultivator lowered her head, a mocking smile on her face. Yubai was indeed extraordinary. Amongst the young disciples of the immortal sect, he was quite famous. But, senior apprentice Sister Ningling was someone that person had taken a liking to, so what qualifications did he have to compete for her? It had to be known that even in the immortal sect, that person was a peak-proud son of heaven. His brilliance was destined to overwhelm his generation and in the future he would surely become a giant of the immortal sect. Humph humph. Chapter 370. Whoosh! A figure flew out from the ancient forest. Blazing sunlight sprinkled down. The air was dry and hot, causing him to narrow his eyes. This cultivator was Qin Yu. After spending 10 days, he had finally left the wilderness. In front of him was a desert that stretched for thousands of miles. Yes, it was a desert that was covered in yellow sand without the least bit of life. It was completely different from the ancient forest, but the two were connected together. It was like someone had created this desert and cut off the wilderness. Qin Yu swept his eyes around. He teleported several times and left the desert. Green appeared in front of him once more and he could see traces of cultivators. At this time, there was a fierce rumbling sound mixed with powerful fluctuations of aura. Qin Yu's eyebrows shot up. This was a battle between two blue sea masters. From their auras, their cultivations shouldn't have reached the level of a revered, they were around 100 dragons. Even so, in the land of divinity and demons, they could still be considered masters that could shake their own lands. Whoosh whoosh, several figures howled past, heading straight for the battlefield. Two of them glanced at Qin Yu before looking away. A mere second-level divine soul wasn't worth caring about. Qin Yu wanted to stabilize his boundary as soon as possible and not cause any problems. Although it was rare to see Blue Sea Masters fight, he had no intention of joining in. But at this time, his complexion changed. This was because the two people fighting were rapidly approaching him. Meng Tai Qing, don't go too far. Hand over the token, otherwise don't blame me for being ruthless today. Damn it. I'll fight you to the death. Qin Yu rapidly flew away. He could faintly hear the words of the two people fighting behind him. Token. Who cared what it was? It was best to leave as soon as possible. Whoosh! After Qin Yu left the blue sea aftershocks, he took a step forward and vanished from sight. Around the battlefield where the two blue seas fought, there were over a dozen cultivators silently watching. One of them, a woman, looked in the direction that Qin Yu left and curled her lips. A battle between blue seas is a rare event and he didn't even dare to watch. With this much courage, I have no idea how he managed to cultivate to the divine soul realm. A middle-aged cultivator shook his head. Qiu Yao, you must remember that there are far too many powerhouses in this world. Before you have enough strength, the best choice is to leave as soon as you discover signs of danger. This junior is only a mere second-level divine soul. If he is even slightly affected, then his body and soul will be destroyed, so he naturally chose to run away. The woman nodded, but her face was still somewhat disapproving. The middle-aged cultivator frowned. However, the battle had reached a critical juncture, so he focused his gaze and said nothing more. Whoosh! Qin Yu landed. He looked at the city in front of him, Square Wave City. Yes, it was the city marked on the map. He tidied up his black robe and followed the crowd to the city gate. After paying some spirit stones, he smoothly entered Square Wave City. He didn't have any thoughts of strolling around. He found a large inn. Give me an independent courtyard. Quiet and don't let anyone disturb me. After paying the fee, the servant smiled and bowed to lead the way. After passing through the noisy front yard, they arrived at a small lake. There were over a dozen courtyards built around the lake. Qin Yu's residence was among them. If you have any needs, you can call the service desk directly through the phone in the room. I wish you a pleasant stay. Qin Yu tossed down several spirit stones. The servant's smile became even brighter. He bowed and left. He pushed open the door and entered. With the control token in his hand, he could completely control the array formation of the entire residence while he was here. Sensing it, he felt it was worth its price. The power of the array formation wasn't ordinary, it was clear that a master had been invited to arrange it. Without sensing anything wrong, Qin Yu found a training chamber and took out 9th province to isolate his aura. Then, he took out a pill and swallowed it. Although his soul touched upon the rules and his cultivation would rapidly increase for a period of time, with the assistance of pills, he could increase his cultivation even faster. Qin Yu didn't lack pills, so he naturally chose a faster method. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. The training chamber opened and Qin Yu walked out with a bright smile. The gifts that the South Shine Nation's old ancestor had given him were far greater than he had imagined. After his boundary stabilized and his cultivation slowed down, he discovered that he had already reached the middle 4th level of Divine Soul. Moreover, in his soul space, the pure soul strength contained within the soul bead was rapidly emitting outwards, causing his soul to become tyrannical at an astonishing speed. He picked up the room phone and dialed the front desk to explain his request. Soon, someone from the inn knocked on his door. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He never imagined that it would be a Divine Soul Realm cultivator standing outside. Dear guest, how are you? According to your request, you need to pay 1,000 spirit stones in order to use the training field for 2 hours. The cultivator smiled and had an extremely good attitude. No problem. Qin Yu swiped the card. Dear guest, please follow me. The inn's divine soul led the way and soon brought Qin Yu to a black stone building. This is an access card. It only gives you 2 hours of access, starting from the moment the guest opens the door. Qin Yu took the card and swiped it over the sensor. The iron door quietly opened and closed after he entered. In front of him was a training field that was similar to the one in the Dao Arena. However, the various equipment was on a different level. Of course, the fees charged by the Dao Arena and this place were also as different as the heavens and earth. Qin Yu only wanted to roughly test his strength, he didn't have too many requirements. As usual, he first inspected himself and didn't find anything wrong. His figure flickered and he arrived in front of the metal pillar. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu clenched his fist and punched out. Bang! Silver light rapidly flowed, revealing the result, 466 flood dragons. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. This was a bit higher than he had estimated. Within his Dantian Sea, the 5-element nascent souls erupted and he punched out a second time. Bang! The silver light suddenly became rich. After several breaths of time, the result appeared, 4,582 flood dragons. Cultivation method superimposed by 10 times. Again. 5-colored divine light erupted, lingering on his fingertips. The air emitted muffled popping sounds as if it were about to be torn apart. Secret art, 5-element sword. Bang! The silver light was incomparably dazzling. 18,024 flood dragons. Qin Yu's body emitted loud crackling sounds. His heart vigorously beat, pushing his blood to the limit. The strength of the king-step demon body erupted. Bang! The silver light was as rich as a full moon. After several breaths of time, the number appeared, 109,047 flood dragons. The entire metal pillar violently hummed and the ground trembled. It made one worry that it would tear apart the ground and fly away in the next moment. Luckily, this sort of damage to public property didn't occur. Qin Yu looked at the slowly fading number and smiled. A combat strength of 109 dragons was considered quite good within the Blue Sea realm. It had to be known that a Blue Sea was not a divine soul. With every increase in combat strength, the difficulty would rise exponentially. Revered 300 dragons was the absolute peak of the Blue Sea realm. The vast majority of Blue Sea realm cultivators would spend their entire lives hovering around 100 dragons of combat strength. Although combat strength didn't represent everything, with the combat strength of 100 dragons in hand, even a revered Blue Sea existence would suffer a great loss if they were caught off guard. Moreover, Qin Yu didn't dare to use the power of the burning heavens. If he truly went all out, he could even kill a revered Blue Sea super powerhouse. Absolute combat strength could instantly erupt. Even if he controlled the power of rules, he still might not have enough time to display it. After erasing the recorded data from the metal pillar, Qin Yu cleaned himself up in the training field and then pushed open the door. And there was still quite a bit of time left before the 2 hours were up. The world in front of him twisted and the inn's divine soul figure appeared. "Guest, if you come out now, we won't refund your spirit stones." Qin Yu shook his head. "I know." "Good. Then I will send the guest out." Just as the inn's divine soul figure finished speaking, he looked up into the skies. 2 figures were rushing towards him, falling into the inn's lake and causing heaven-shaking waves. Humph! A figure suddenly appeared in the skies above the lake. He lifted a hand and pressed down. Space seemed to freeze and the 2 cultivators that were still fighting were directly subdued. "You dare to fight in my family's inn? You're in for big trouble." As he finished speaking, he grabbed the 2 pale cultivators and left. The inn's divine soul revealed a helpless expression. "Guest, please follow me." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. A square wave city so chaotic. When I arrived, I even encountered 2 Blue Sea powerhouses fighting. The inn's divine soul shook his head. "That's not the case. It's just that the infinite realm is about to open and an infinite token has appeared in Square Wave City, thus there has been a series of struggles." He glanced at Qin Yu. "Guest, you didn't come for the token." Qin Yu was startled. He honestly shook his head. "I don't know about this." The inn's divine soul was clearly surprised. But soon, he smiled. "Guest, you have yet to finish spending the 1,000 spirit stones you paid. If you are interested, I can tell you about these matters." Qin Yu knew that the other party might have noticed something from his reaction. But, he was no longer the little rookie that had just entered the land of divinity and demons. He calmly nodded. In the legends, the infinite realm is a fragment left behind after a great world collapsed. There are countless dangers and good fortunes contained within. Many years ago, the rules of the infinite realm were relatively complete and Blue Sea powerhouses were able to wander through it. But afterwards, there was another collapse and only divine soul and below cultivators were able to enter. This is because there are far too many amazing good fortunes within the infinite realm. When Blue Sea powerhouses were able to enter, it was a place where powerhouses fought and slaughtered each other. After that accident occurred, all sides negotiated and decided that the infinite realm would become a place where young disciples could obtain lucky chances. Every time the infinite realm opens, it will attract the entire land of divinity and demons. All the proud children of heaven of the younger generation will gather there. Even the disciples of the legendary Supreme Immortal Sect and Demonic Path will not miss out on this chance. Of course, the Immortal Sect and Demonic Path both have almighty beings standing guard over them. When the Infinite Realm opens, the almighty beings can directly seize enough infinite tokens to use. In addition to the 7 great empires, only a small portion will be left over and they will fall into the world for cultivators to obtain. The inn's divine soul leisurely looked forwards. The slaughter you see is because the infinite realm has opened and the infinite token has appeared. He shook his head, a sympathetic expression on his face. He looked at Qin Yu and said, "Unfortunately, our cultivations are too weak and we don't have the qualifications to compete for the lucky chances of the infinite realm. Even if we have a token in our hands, all that awaits us is death. As for those 2 first-level divine soul boys, I can only say that they don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Even if they go, they will only be sending themselves to their deaths." Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, the inn's divine soul only thought that he had suffered a mental blow. He shook his head, no longer speaking. After escorting Qin Yu to his residence, he bid his farewells and left. After closing the courtyard doors, Qin Yu could no longer conceal the excitement on his face. When the infinite realm opened, proud children of heaven at the divine soul realm and below would gather. With Ning Ling's talent, it was likely that she had already reached divine soul after entering the land of divinity and demons. In other words, there was a high chance that Ning Ling would enter the infinite realm. The pleasant surprise came too quickly. Qin Yu took a deep breath and barely managed to suppress his surging emotions. At this time, there was only one thought in his mind: he had to enter the infinite realm. The immortal sect was too far away, but the infinite realm was a possibility. He couldn't wait to tell Ning Qin that he had kept his promise and come to the land of divinity and demons. After a long time, Qin Yu composed himself. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. If he wanted to enter the infinite realm, he first had to obtain an infinite token. Qin Yu suddenly thought back to the day he left the wilderness and the slaughter in the blue sea. It seemed that it had all been for a token. It was highly likely that it was an infinite token. Thinking of this, Qin Yu felt a bit of regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have stayed behind on that day. Perhaps he would have had a chance to fish in troubled waters and obtain an infinite token. But now, it was already too late. Luckily, according to the inn's divine soul, there should be more than one infinite token that appeared in Square Wave City. Qin Yu turned and left. He had to obtain one. When he first chose this inn, it was because it was large enough. To be able to open such a large inn in Square Wave City and also in such a good location, one's background was naturally extraordinary. This sort of place with a strong background would often become a gathering place for all sorts of people. It was also a place where all sorts of news and rumors were the most active. Qin Yu entered the restaurant in front of the courtyard. After ordering a table of food and wine, he soon heard the news he was most concerned about. This time, a total of 3 infinite tokens appeared in Square Wave City. The first was forcefully taken away by the county city master with his great supernatural powers. I heard that he wanted to bestow it to his favorite son and send him into the infinite realm to seize his good fortune. The second token experienced several twists and turns. 2 blue sea masters fiercely fought over it, and then there was a chaotic battle. It's unknown who took it away and its whereabouts are unknown. Now, in Square Wave City, there is only one token left, and that token is with the Hu family. The cultivator who spoke had white hair and his face was filled with the vicissitudes of time. Although he seemed lonely and desolate, one could see from the focused expressions on his face that this person's information was highly reliable. A 6th-level divine soul cultivator sighed. I've heard that the county city master has a combat strength comparable to a revered blue sea. As for the second token, it's gone missing and there's almost no chance of it ever appearing again. The third token is in the hands of the Hu family. Although their old ancestor isn't at the Blue Sea realm, his true strength is far more terrifying than in ordinary blue seas. Although it is said to be a good fortune for cultivators at the divine soul realm and below, we are people without roots. If we can't even obtain an infinite token, how can we compete for it? These words resonated. Many divine soul cultivators revealed looks of grief and indignation. They had all gathered here for the infinite token, but who knew that this would be the result? The weathered cultivator drank a cup of wine and lightly said, "If you want an infinite token, it isn't impossible." With these words, the surroundings fell silent. Everyone's eyes widened, their faces filled with disbelief. Is this true? Could there be another infinite token? I ask fellow Daoist Wu to speak clearly. The cultivator surnamed Wu calmly swept his eyes around. Although the Hu family obtained an infinite token, their family has no successor. It's highly likely that this token will appear in the auction house. After he finished speaking, he no longer stayed. He tossed down money and walked away. Bang! The restaurant immediately boiled over with excitement. All the cultivators revealed looks of excitement. This surnamed Wu had always been well informed and wouldn't ruin his own reputation. Since he dared to reveal this, he was 90% certain he would succeed. Go go go! They had to immediately make preparations. They had to gather as much financial resources as possible in the shortest period of time. This was their final chance to obtain an infinite token. In the blink of an eye, the bustling restaurant became deserted. Qin Yu looked up, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. He laid down the spirit stones and paid the bill before slowly walking out of the restaurant. The Hu family was famous in Square Wave City. It wasn't difficult for him to find them. Qin Yu stood in a remote corner and looked around. He frowned. Chapter 371. Hu family. At a round table in a small study, 12 people stood around it, each one of them with tyrannical auras. Just how precious is the infinite token? Obtaining it is a lucky chance for my Hu family. We cannot miss it. A black-haired old man coldly said. The family faction elders around him all nodded in agreement. The purple-clothed middle-aged cultivator sneered. Second elder's words are pleasant to hear, but there is only one infinite token. Who should go to the infinite realm? The second elder humphed. The infinite realm is incomparably dangerous and masters from all over gather there. Only the strongest divine soul of my Hu family has a chance of going. What, does third elder have an opinion? I do. The third elder didn't give any face. The strongest divine soul that second elder speaks of, that should be referring to yourself. The second elder angrily shouted, so what if I am? Do you want to compete with me? The third elder contemptuously smiled. That's right, you are indeed the strongest divine soul of my Hu family. But, the lucky chances of the infinite realm are prepared for young proud children of heaven. You are already over 2,400 years old and have no potential at all. Letting you enter the infinite realm is a waste. The second elder was enraged. You are seeking death. The first elder, who had his head drooped listlessly, suddenly spoke up. All right, shut up. His voice wasn't loud, but it caused the second elder and third elder to stop and lower their heads in respect. The great elder was the representative appointed by the old ancestor. Although he didn't care too much about family matters, as long as he spoke he would have the final say. Third elder, how do you think we should deal with this infinite token? The second elder was anxious but he didn't dare to interrupt. His face flushed red. The third elder earnestly said, Great elder, our Hu family hasn't been in a good situation these past years. Our income from the outside world has been constantly shrinking. Some time ago, there were even some businesses that were having difficulties with cash flow. If this continues, there will be a major problem. So, in my opinion, this infinite token should be handed over to the auction house for public bidding. It will definitely be able to sell for an astonishing price and our family's predicament will be easily solved. After a pause, his eyes revealed a cold intent as he swept his eyes over everyone at the table. Moreover, once the auction is opened, it will surely cause chaos. We might even have a chance to quietly take back the infinite token. The great elder nodded. Good. We'll do as third elder says. Tell the auction house that we will only accept spirit stones for the auction of the infinite token. Many precious treasures could not be bought with spirit stones, but sometimes, spirit stones were more suitable than some precious treasures. What the Hu family needed now was a massive amount of spirit stones to fill the family's deficit. The second elder gnashed his teeth, flicked his sleeves, and left. Unless the grand elder spoke, no one could overturn the grand elder's decision. He could only think of a way to steal the infinite token after the auction. The third elder smugly smiled. Wanting to take the infinite token for himself. Dream on. Send a message to the Paradise Auction House that my Hu family will be auctioning off the infinite token. Have them send a master to take it away. In private, the third elder owned 30% of the shares of the Heaven Hollow Auction House. This kind of thing was bound to earn a large commission, so of course, he would leave it to his own people. Soon, the entire Square Wave City learned that the Yi family's infinite token would be publicly auctioned off at the Heavenly Abode Auction House 3 days from now. Moreover, this auction only accepted spirit stones. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Countless cultivators were excited. Some family clans and influences that had no other way to obtain the infinite token began to move. My son's talent is extraordinary. He reached the 6th level of Divine Soul in 200 years and his combat strength can compare to a peak Divine Soul. If he enters the infinite realm, he might be able to obtain a lucky chance to break into the Blue Sea realm. Immediately pass down orders. Have the entire family's wealth gather. We must seize this infinite token in this auction. Humph humph. I must obtain the infinite token. Immediately tell teacher and father that I need their help. Hurry hurry hurry. Hurry to Square Wave City. We are too far away and if we are delayed on the way there is a chance we will miss the auction. Damn it, in terms of spirit stones, how can I, a wandering cultivator, compare with those cultivators from families and sects? But I also have a chance. If I kill the person who wins the infinite token, I will naturally be able to obtain it. Qin Yu's lips curved up in a smile. The infinite token was really going to be auctioned off. Otherwise, in such a short period of time, the only way he could obtain it was to brace himself and steal it. Only accepting spirit stones to bid. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He put on a black robe to cover his appearance, stood up, and left the inn. He walked along the main street of the city. Because of the matter of the infinite token auction, the entire city was faintly stirred up. Soon, a black plaque appeared in front of him. Written on it were, Great Desolate Lake. The infinite token only accepted spirit stones to bid. When he left the South Shine Nation, the old ancestor had given him 5 million spirit stones. In addition to his own savings, he had over 10 million. But Qin Yu didn't have full confidence that he could smoothly obtain the infinite token with these spirit stones. So, he came here to borrow spirit stones. Dear guest, how are you? What do you need? Just as he entered, a beautiful female cultivator greeted him with a sweet smile. Qin Yu revealed a trace of his aura. I want to see your chief steward. The female cultivator's attitude was even more respectful. Dear guest, please wait a moment. I will immediately pass on a message for you. In the land of divinity and demons, divine soul cultivators were considered powerhouses and had the qualifications to do so. Soon, after obtaining permission, the female cultivator bowed and said, "Dear guest, please follow me." Chinyu passed through the trading area in front of him and entered a quiet office in the back. In an elegantly decorated room, he saw the chief steward of Square Wave City's Great Desolate Lake Branch Division. This person had a middle-aged appearance and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. "Dear guest, may I ask why you are looking for me?" Chinyu lightly said, "You should have a way to contact the high-level figures of the Great Desolate Lake. I would like to speak with revered Ming." The chief steward's heart shook. He respectfully said, "Revered Ming has an exalted status. I don't dare to casually disturb him." Chinyu frowned. "You can also contact Miss White Fong Fong," the chief steward whispered inwardly. Unless one was tired of living, there really wasn't anyone who would be so bored as to come to a place like this and directly contact revered Ming and the young miss. Perhaps this person had some great background. Contacting the young miss was much simpler than contacting revered Ming. At worst, he would just be reprimanded a bit. Thinking of this, he nodded and said, "I will try." "Dear guest, please wait a moment." He picked up the red telephone on the desk and dialed a number. The call was soon connected. The chief steward explained the situation and then hung up. "Just wait. If the young miss is willing, she will call." Chinyu nodded. Time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Just as the chief steward thought there was no hope and was about to have Chinyu leave, the red telephone suddenly rang. He glanced at it and saw that it was a phone number representing headquarters. The chief steward quickly picked it up and respectfully said a few words. Then, he handed the phone to Chinyu. "It is the young miss. Dear guest, please speak quickly." Chinyu placed the phone to his ear. On the other side, White Fingfing's faint voice sounded out, "Which fellow Taoist is looking for me?" This girl, when she put on an act, she really did have the aura of a noble daughter of the heavens. Chinyu, who had seen her in private, only found it funny to hear her say such words. As her laughter spread out, the other side fell silent for a moment. Then, a scream nearly tore through his eardrums. "Big Brother Baoyu. You are Big Brother Baoyu, right?" Chinyu moved his ear a little. "Stop, if you continue to scream like this, I'm going to go deaf." White Fong Fong was extremely excited. "Big Brother Baoyu, why did you run all the way to Square Wave City? How about I look for you to play?" The chief steward immediately broke out in a cold sweat. From these words, he could tell that the young Miss' favorable impression of this fellow Taoist Baoyu had broken through the heavens. Luckily, his attitude just now had been good. If he had provoked this person, his good days would have come to an end. The chief steward stood up and took several steps back. He smiled at Chinyu, turned, and left. This person had an unusual relationship with the young miss, so how could he listen to their conversation? This was something that the chief steward understood the ways of the world. Chinyu didn't care about the ambiguous look in the chief steward's eyes. He comforted her for a while before White Fong Fong gave up on running over and told her that he needed spirit stones. The young miss proudly said, "My family has plenty of spirit stones. Big Brother Baoyu, feel free to take as many as you want. If the Square Wave City Branch Division doesn't have enough, I will have someone transfer it over." Chinyu was moved. He spoke a few more words with her and then called the chief steward back, indicating for him to answer the phone. "Square Wave City Branch Steward. I am White Fong Fong and Big Brother Baoyu is my best friend. If he needs some spirit stones, give them to him no matter how much he needs. I will explain this to father and mother." Towards outsiders, White Fong Fong had a lofty and aloof attitude. The manager repeatedly nodded. After asking whether or not Qin Yu needed to answer the phone, he respectfully waited for the other party to hang up. Putting down the phone, his smile immediately brightened. I didn't know your identity before, so please forgive me for my lack of manners. Esteemed guest, please take a seat and have a taste of the spirit tea I've collected. It's not bad. Qin Yu expressed his thanks. The chief steward personally brewed the tea. Soon, the room was filled with a fragrant aroma. As one drank a mouthful of it, it was warm and mellow, causing one's spirits to rise. Good tea. Thank you for your hospitality. The manager's smile widened. As long as honored guest is satisfied. As the manager of a city's branch, he naturally knew his limits. He put down his teacup and said, Miss has already given the order. How many spirit stones do you need? Our Bo City branch just happened to have the income of the previous year that we have yet to hand over. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and then stretched out 2 fingers. 2 million. Sure, I'll order my men to prepare it immediately. Qin Yu shook his head. No, 20 million. The manager's eyes widened and he violently coughed. 20 million, that's right. Qin Yu nodded in confirmation. The manager was embarrassed. Although the Miss was the only successor to the Great Desolate Lake, she still didn't hold any real authority. If it were 3 to 5 million spirit stones then that would be fine, but 20 million was far too much. The Square Wave City branch might be able to take out this much, but if there was an accident with this massive sum of money, the Miss would at most be reprimanded. As for him, he would absolutely suffer. Qin Yu flipped his hand and took out a long sword. This sword was broad and heavy, but it exuded an endlessly sharp aura. Just its aura alone caused the surrounding space to emit crackling sounds and countless tiny cracks to appear. This sword can be used as a mortgage. The manager's eyes brightened. The Great Desolate Lake sold pills and had encountered all sorts of transactions, so exchanging magic tools was common. As the manager, he naturally had superb eyesight and was able to judge the value of a treasure. He was able to see just how amazing this long sword was. Just the aura it emitted could tear apart space. This was at least a peak divine soul treasure. To some sword cultivators, this was worth tens of millions. With this treasure sword as a foundation, 20 million spirit stones was acceptable. As the manager thought this, he revealed an astonished expression. How can this be? Qin Yu shook his head. I have a good relationship with Miss White Fong Fong, but I still have to abide by the rules. I asked the manager to check it. If you agree, then I will leave this sword here as a mortgage. Thank you for your understanding, but I have no other choice. The manager waved his hand. I naturally believe in your reputation, but there is no need to check it. He flipped his hand and took out an encrypted metal box from his storage ring. After verifying his identity and the key, he opened it and took out 2 deep purple spirit stone cards. Honored guest, these are spirit stone cards issued by the South Shine Nation. Each one has a balance of 10 million. Please check them. Qin Yu received them. After probing them with his divine sense, he stood up and bid his farewells. The manager tried to persuade him to stay, but to no avail. He personally escorted him outside and waited for Qin Yu's figure to vanish before hurrying back. He picked up the long sword and carefully poured in magic power. Sword light instantly gushed out, shattering the entire space around him. A nearby desk was accidentally sucked in. Without making the least bit of sound, it was smashed to pieces. The manager's eyes widened. This might was far greater than he expected. Looking at the long sword in his hand, he didn't dare to delay any longer. He hurriedly sought out the guard commander that oversaw the branch division. This person had an 8th level divine soul cultivation and was the #1 master of the Square Wave City branch division. He had also practiced the sword for over 1,000 years, so he should be able to accurately judge the rank of this long sword. When the guard commander casually slashed out with his sword, the sword light split the entire lake in half and then crushed half of the garden. Both he and the manager were stunned. The former was so excited that his body shivered. The might of a blue sea, this is the might of a blue sea. After the divine soul realm, the rank of a magic tool depended on the strength of the rules it contained. A divine soul level magic tool contained the rules of the divine soul realm. A blue sea level magic tool contained the rules of the blue sea realm. A single sword strike had split the lake, cutting it thousands of feet deep into the ground and destroying a garden for 100 miles. Such a terrifying might could only be achieved by the rules of a blue sea. The manager regained his composure. He suddenly slapped his head. This is bad. I thought it was only a peak divine soul treasure and 20 million spirit stones was enough to buy it, but I never imagined it would be a blue sea treasure. 20 million spirit stones isn't even enough to buy half of it. This is bad. This is bad. I might have already offended this honored guest. The guard commander was on good terms with him. After he asked about the situation, his complexion also darkened. You fool. Since he is a friend of the miss, just give him as many spirit stones as he wants, but you actually accept it as magic tool. If he can casually take out a blue sea treasure, how could he be an ordinary person? Immediately return the treasure sword, otherwise there will be a great disaster. The manager nodded again and again, a cold sweat dripping down his forehead. But, what left him in despair was that even though the branch division was operating at full speed, they still couldn't find the mysterious honored guest. This person seemed to have vanished. Chapter 372. Qin Yu had only casually taken the ancient god's sword from the South Shine Nation's treasury, so he didn't understand its true value. Although he cultivated the way of the sword, his strongest weapon was the 5-element swords that had fused into his body. He had no use for the ancient god's sword, thus he pawned it to the great desolate lake and took away 20 million spirit stones. In Qin Yu's heart, he had given the ancient god's sword to the great desolate lake and didn't plan on taking it back. In truth, strictly speaking, Qin Yu hadn't suffered too much of a loss. The ancient god sword's true value might have been around 50 million spirit stones, but since he had to urgently sell it before the auction, it was normal for the price to be pushed down. In addition to my own spirit stones, there's a total of 30 million. That should be enough to bid for the infinite token. Qin Yu relaxed. He patiently waited in the inn for the auction to begin. 3 days later, the Heavenly Grotto auction house was decorated with lanterns and streamers. Although this was only a small and rushed auction, the streets were crowded with people and carriages. It was clear just how enthusiastic the auction was. Qin Yu spent a great deal of time before he arrived outside the auction house. After paying a deposit of 10,000 spirit stones, he obtained a random seat plate. The Heavenly Grotto auction house was truly worthy of its name. Underneath its ordinary appearance, there was a completely different world inside. At a glance, the space inside was definitely much larger than the outside. Space array formations could expand space with the power of array formations. This could greatly increase the intensity of space and prevent cultivators from teleporting or using secret space techniques to sneak in. This was also to ensure the auction house's safety. Otherwise, if a master took a treasure and directly teleported away, it would be extremely difficult to catch them if they were prepared. Qin Yu found his seat and sat down. He closed his eyes and meditated. Several eyes swept over him before turning away. A second-level divine soul cultivation wasn't bad in normal times. But now that powerhouses had gathered in Square Wave City and the number of divine soul cultivators had skyrocketed, a mere second-level divine soul was nothing at all. Soon, the auction began. Welcome everyone to the Heavenly Grotto Auction House. Today, I will be the auctioneer. If no one has any objections, then the auction will begin immediately. On the round stage, the charming woman waited for a moment. After a moment of silence, she turned and clapped her hands. The first auction item. This auction had been rushed and there weren't any precious items. In addition, most people had come for the infinite token, so the auction proceeded quickly. The beautiful female auctioneer obviously had also received instructions, so she didn't care about the cold atmosphere. Half an hour later, she took a deep breath, and her calm face became a bit flushed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last item of this auction, which is also the most precious treasure that our Dongtian auction house has handled since its establishment. It is the infinite token. Four cultivators carried a silver metal box onto the stage. Each of them had shackles on their hands that were connected to the metal box. Their eyes shined with a sharp light. Even the weakest among them was at the fourth level of divine soul. Walking to the center of the round table, the four of them each took out a key and inserted it into the metal box at the same time. Kacha, 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 the metal box opened automatically. But within it, there was also a transparent round cover with the palm-sized infinite token within. Qin Yu couldn't help but sit up straight. This was the first time he had seen a treasure naturally condensed from the world's rules. The infinite token was black all over. The front had the word infinite written on it, and the back was covered with complex patterns. Looking carefully, these patterns were like living creatures, constantly wriggling about. There is no need for me to elaborate on the function and meaning of the token. Everyone here should be well aware of this. The charming auctioneer loudly said, "One infinite token, the base price is 3 million spirit stones. Each bid cannot be less than 100,000 spirit stones." The auction begins. From the first second, the competition entered a white-hot stage. 5 million. In the VIP seats in the front row, a black-clothed old man shouted out. Before his voice fell, 2 seats to the left, another VIP bid, 6 million. This silver-clothed youth clearly wasn't frightened by the black-clothed old man's bid. He directly raised the price by 1 million, his face filled with determination. 5 million. The third bid came from behind. The surrounding cultivators all gasped in surprise. They never thought that there would be such a ruthless character hidden in the scattered seats. Several female cultivators that approached the bidding youth had particularly commanding looks in their eyes. The heat in their eyes made it hard for others to look straight at them. Every time there was a large-scale auction, there would be this sort of female cultivator that would appear. They didn't buy anything, but came to the cultivators participating in the auction. If they were lucky enough to bump into one, they would never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of their lives. Moreover, with a powerful backer, they would be able to live a stable life. Qin Yu didn't care about any of this, it was all for the sake of survival. It was just that their methods were different. But as he looked at the young cultivator bidding, he secretly shook his head. This person looked calm, but he was barely holding on. To him, 5 million spirit stones should be nearing his bottom line. And indeed, after 2 more bids, the youth's bid of 3 million spirit stones was broken through. His entire body was instantly soaked in sweat. He slumped down in his seat, gasping for breath, his eyes filled with unwillingness. When the price broke through 10 million, the number of people still bidding had decreased by more than half. There were only a few people still competing. For instance, the black-clothed old man in the VIP seats, the silver-clothed youth, the gorgeously dressed woman, and a large one-eyed man. These 4 people increased the bid the most fiercely. The lowest bid was still 500,000 spirit stones, as if this wasn't anything at all to them. Qin Yu secretly rejoiced. Luckily, He had exchanged the ancient god's sword for 20 million spirit stones, otherwise he could only stare helplessly on as the infinite token was won by someone else. However, besides these 4 people, there seemed to be several other people in the VIP seats who hadn't made a bid since the auction began. It was clear that these people weren't here to watch the fun. Qin Yu's eyes revealed a heavy look. It seemed that the competition for the infinite token hadn't reached its true climax yet. The black-clothed old man frowned. 16 million. This infinite token is something that my family's master prepared for the young master. I ask that everyone give me some face. As he spoke, he flipped his hand and took out a token. Beneath the light, it shimmered with a mystical light. It clearly contained a profound strength of rules. The county city's iron armored army. It's that guardian general. That is a character with true authority. He is also a blue sea realm powerhouse. The silver-clothed youth sneered. So what if he's a blue sea powerhouse? Do you think he can scare us away? Today is the auction house, not the barracks of your iron armored army. 17 million. You. The black-clothed old man was enraged, a vicious light shining in his eyes. A rune appeared between the silver-clothed youth's eyebrows. A terrifying aura immediately spread out from his body. If it weren't for the fact that the infinite token doesn't allow revered blue sea masters and above to compete for it, do you think this token could still be auctioned? You are. The black-clothed old man hurriedly shut his mouth, as if he didn't dare to say anything else. He lowered his head, no longer increasing the price. The silver-clothed youth clearly had a great background. A single rune had scared the black-clothed old man away. The gorgeously dressed woman smiled. Little brother, you are quite impressive. This big sister will add another million, right? You won't be angry, right? The silver-clothed youth coldly coughed. Since this is an auction, everyone should speak with spirit stones. It seemed that he feared this woman a bit. The one-eyed large fellow hesitated for a moment. He laid down the number token in his hand and chose to withdraw. Seeing that there were only 2 people left to compete, Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. He looked up towards the VIP seats and saw that the silent cultivators were beginning to move. An incomparably handsome youth with shoulder-length hair opened his eyes. His voice was so cold that it was frightening. 20 million. He directly raised the price by 2 million. However, this high price was broken in the blink of an eye. 21 million. Another silent VIP made a bid. 23 million. A third VIP interfered. In several breaths of time, the price soared once more. The silver-clothed youth bid 23. 5 million. The woman hesitated for a moment before shaking her head and laying down the number token. Although an infinite token was incomparably precious, over 20 million spirit stones was clearly too high a price. As the Hu family's third elder was quietly watching the auction, he was both excited and regretful. It was already beyond his expectations that the infinite token could be sold for over 20 million spirit stones. But, to bid with over 20 million spirit stones, he absolutely wasn't an ordinary person. If the Hu family wanted to take back the infinite token, it would likely be impossible. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He originally thought that 30 million spirit stones was a lot, but he never imagined that the cultivators of the land of divinity and demons would all be so heroic. If he didn't bid now, he wouldn't have another chance. He didn't dare to wait any longer. He raised his number token and said, 30 million. The entire auction house fell silent. The surrounding cultivators, whose faces were flushed, were all startled by the extravagant spending of money on the VIP seats. Big brother, it was 30 million, not 30,000. Are you sure you aren't confused? But when they saw Qin Yu's calm and steady expression, they knew he was absolutely sober. In other words, he really did bid 30 million. In the front and back rows, there were several well-dressed female cultivators who could see Qin Yu. At this time, their eyes had turned into small suns. Who would have thought that there was such a thick thigh hidden right beside them? Moreover, he was so young and handsome. If they could have an affair with him, they wouldn't have to worry about anything in the future. Look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm so beautiful. If you want, then let's go roll in the sheets tonight. Qin Yu was expressionless, as if he didn't feel the attention of the entire auction house at all. His calm and steady performance caused many people to believe that he was absolutely a great figure playing the pig to eat the tiger. 30 million spirit stones, this honored guest has bid 30 million spirit stones. Is there anyone else bidding? On the round stage, the charming auctioneer's face was flushed red. She looked at Qin Yu, her eyes so charming that they seemed as if they were about to cry. At this time, Qin Yu didn't care about her eyes at all. He wished that he could hurry up and take back the token. He only had 30 million spirit stones. The reason he bet everything here was to scare off his competitors. If the number increased a little, then he would have no hope. 30 million going once, 31 million. The one who bid was the silver-clothed youth. The corners of his eyes twitched. It was clear that this price had nearly reached the limit of what he could bear. The incomparably handsome youth with long hair frowned. He raised the number plate and said, 32 million. Qin Yu let out a long breath. He leaned back in his chair, a bitter smile on his face. If he failed, then even if he took out all the spirit stones in his storage ring, he still wouldn't be able to increase the price. However, his eyes remained calm. He originally didn't want to do this, but now he couldn't care about it any longer. The silver-clothed youth glared at her. He clenched his teeth and said, I request to suspend the auction. The auctioneer was startled. She quickly said, Honored guests, according to the rules of the auction house, if a bid exceeds 10 million spirit stones, the participating cultivators will only have one chance to request to suspend the auction. The maximum period of time cannot exceed a quarter hour. She gestured and the 4 cultivators guarding the metal box behind her pulled out their keys and closed it. The silver-clothed youth waved his hand to lay down a soundproofing spell. Then, he took out his handphone and dialed a number. He hurriedly said a few words and then revealed a smile. All right, let the auction continue. The auctioneer nodded. Honored guests, the auction will begin again. The silver-clothed youth directly bid, 40 million. Amidst countless shocked gazes, he coldly said, This is my bottom line. If you bid again, I will give you the infinite token. The handsome cultivator frowned. He thought for several breaths of time and slowly said, 41 million. Whoosh, the entire audience was shocked. Everyone's jaws dropped open. They never thought that he would bid again. The ground beneath the silver-clothed youth's feet instantly cracked. His complexion paled and he closed his eyes. He kept his word and didn't bid again. Of course, he didn't have the courage to continue increasing the price. 40 million was already his limit after paying such a great price. The charming auctioneer was also frightened by this price. She didn't think that anyone else would bid again. She gulped and said, If no honored guests continue to bid, then this infinite token will be won by honored guest number 16. At this time, a voice sounded out, I request to suspend the auction. Schwa, schwa. Chapter 373. The charming auctioneer was stunned. Her body shivered. There was only one reason for the auction to be suspended at this time. 41 million spirit stones wasn't the limit, heavens. Her legs trembled and an inexplicable heat surged out. Her voice trembled as she said, honored guest 1937 requests to suspend the auction for a quarter hour at most. The handsome youth's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. But soon he closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair to rest. He had obtained an ancient inheritance and obtained an entire spirit stone vein. He wasn't afraid of competing in wealth at all. He had to obtain this infinite token no matter what. The silver-clothed youth's eyes shook. He bitterly smiled. He thought he was fully prepared, but he never imagined the price would reach such a terrifying degree. He didn't lose unjustly. Qin Yu stood up. Please prepare a quiet room for me. The auction house master personally appeared and led him to an appraisal room. Honored guest, please rest assured that this place is absolutely safe and no one will spy on you. The person turned and left. Qin Yu's palm flashed with light and a token appeared. This was the token that Qin Wuxiang had given him before he left the South Shine Nation's capital. It represented his official status. Originally, before the good fortune tablet completely recognized him as its master, Qin Yu didn't plan on appearing in the South Shine Nation's old ancestors' line of sight again. But for the infinite token, he had no choice but to change his original intentions. Qin Wuxiang represented the will of the South Shine Nation's old ancestor. As the true ruler of the entire nation, if he was given a token, his status shouldn't be too low. His thoughts stirred and he poured magic power into the token. The token flashed for a moment before returning to tranquility. A message was sent out in an extremely secretive manner. Qin Yu put away the token. If it was useful, then the person who received the message would soon arrive. Several minutes later, there was a knock on the quiet room's door. Qin Yu said, "Enter." The auction house master's face was filled with shock and awe. He respectfully bowed. "Honored guest, the city lord requests an audience." As he spoke, his body trembled. The city lord of Square Wave City represented the government and ruled over this territory. He possessed supreme authority and a transcendent status. For hundreds of thousands of miles, all families, sects, and influences had to rely on his breath to survive. But now, the dignified city lord had arrived at the auction house and even respectfully requested an audience with the guest in the quiet room. This guest had just applied to suspend the auction, and the city lord was about to arrive. He wouldn't believe that there was no relationship between them. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. "Invite the city lord in." "Yes." "Oh." The auction house owner retreated to the side and a scholarly middle-aged man walked into the quiet room. The owner of the auction house closed the door and retreated far away under the cold gaze of the guards. A trace of surprise flashed in the city lord's eyes. He cupped his hands together and said, "Please show me your proof of identity." Qin Yu felt a bit strange. Not too long ago, he had managed to escape from the clutches of a noble from the Chu Empire, but now he was being called a noble as well. This world was indeed strange. With a flip of his hand, he took out the token, and the suspicions in the city lord's heart instantly dissipated. As the city lord, he could be considered a high official, so he could naturally recognize that this was an item issued by the imperial family. There was no way it was fake. "Square Wave City Lord Kong Mingxin pays respect to your highness." It seemed that the status given to him by the South Shine Nation's old ancestor wasn't ordinary. Qin Yu put away the token and said, "I need to transfer some spirit stones to participate in the auction." Kong Ming said in his heart, "All right." He didn't even ask and directly agreed. Qin Yu pushed open the door and walked out. Kong Mingxin followed 2 steps behind. As the guards outside saw this, they immediately lowered their heads in awe. The auction house master's heart shook. He could see the respect in the city lord's eyes, and he felt that this honored guest's status was even more unfathomable. How could he dare to allow Qin Yu to return to his original position? The auction house master personally led Qin Yu to the VIP seats at the very front. City Lord Kong stood behind him, like a steward or guard. But most of his body was covered in darkness and his head was lowered. For a time, no one discovered that this low-key middle-aged man was the formidable existence that controlled the entirety of Square Wave City. Seeing the auction house master's gaze, the charming auctioneer hurriedly said, "Everyone, honored guest 1937 has returned. The auction will continue." Qin Yu lifted his hand. 42 million. The handsome cultivator's complexion didn't change. 43 million, 44 million. 45 million. The two people increased the price without any pause. Soon, the price broke through an astonishing 60 million. There was no sound in the entire auction house except for the calm voices of these two people. In the shadows, City Lord Kong frowned. He leaned over and whispered several words into Qin Yu's ear. After several breaths of silence, Qin Yu slowly nodded. City Lord Kong stood up. He lightly said, "No matter how much anyone bids, my young master will bid 1,000,000 higher." As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes widened. Just how much confidence did one have to be to dare to boast like this? If someone casually bid 100 million, would he dare to add another million? The handsome youth fiercely clenched his fists, anger in his eyes. He coldly said, "What big words! I have 93 million spirit stones. If you can take out more, then the infinite token will be yours." City Lord Kong looked up, a sharp light flashing in the darkness. "Good, my young master bids 94 million. The handsome youth stiffened. A terrifying aura had already locked onto him. Several figures quickly approached. Although they were all wearing casual clothes, the cold and murderous aura they exuded made it obvious that they were from the army at a glance. Moreover, they were military masters that had killed countless people. If you have 93 million spirit stones, then you will be safe. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving today. The handsome youth's complexion paled. He angrily roared, "What do you want to do? This is Square Wave City, a place covered by the laws of the land. You are not allowed to be insolent." City Lord Kong stepped forwards, his figure appearing beneath the light. "In Square Wave City, I am the law." Just how arrogant were these words? But in the entire auction house, no one dared to reveal the least bit of contempt. Everyone groaned inwardly. City Lord, as the highest official, he controlled the territory of Square Wave City. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the incarnation of the laws of the land. As they looked at Qin Yu again, endless awe filled their eyes. To casually summon the city lord here and be as respectful as a servant, this young cultivator's background was absolutely unimaginable. All sorts of cries of alarm entered the ears of the handsome youth. His face was devoid of blood. His body shivered as he took out 9 deep purple spirit stone cards from his storage ring, as well as 3 black spirit stone cards. He didn't dare to resist at all, otherwise he would definitely be killed on the spot. Several army cultivators coldly seized the cards and inspected them. After several breaths of time, they tossed them back to him. "City Lord, there are indeed 93 million spirit stones." City Lord Kong nodded. "If that's the case, then forget it." He looked around, "Is there anyone else who wants to compete with my young master?" Silence fell. With the city lord personally taking action, let alone 94 million, even if it were 94 spirit stones, no one would dare to bid. City Lord Kong nodded. "Little girl, since no one has bid, you should announce the result." "Ah, yes. The auctioneer was frightened. She hurriedly said, "The infinite token was won by distinguished guest 1937. The final price is 94 million spirit stones." As this price was spoken, her complexion paled and her heart filled with fear. City Lord. 94 million spirit stones was clearly far too much. But, was this sort of cheap advantage easy to take? If she wasn't careful, she might lose her life. Beneath the stage, the auction house master also had a look of fear. The Hu family's third elder, who was secretly watching the auction, was also stunned. He never imagined that the auction would attract such a terrifying existence. With your status, it should be simple for you to obtain the infinite token. Is there a need to harm others here? The third elder wanted to cry. The infinite token belonged to the Hu family. Did he really dare to ask the city lord for 94 million spirit stones? That was simply seeking death. As for fishing in troubled waters and taking back the infinite token, he couldn't even think about it. With the city lord supporting him from behind, even a revered blue sea super powerhouse would have to bow his head. This was because this represented the will of the South Shine Nation officials. A massive number of cultivators with ominous intentions suddenly felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. All of their excitement and killing intent were instantly extinguished. All of them hurriedly sent out messages. Stop all preparations and hurry up and leave. This person isn't someone we can provoke. Don't speak any nonsense. Hurry up and leave the city. Even City Lord Kong has appeared. If you want to die, don't drag me down with you. Everyone run away and don't come back for 100 years. We must have been blind this time. We actually wanted to move against someone with such a terrifying background. Outside the auction house, a large number of suspicious cultivators with ominous eyes revealed looks of shock and panic. They turned and left without hesitation. In several breaths of time, they had all vanished. The auction had already ended. In the highest level VIP room of the auction house master offered up the infinite token with both hands. He could no longer suppress the fear in his heart and fell to his knees. Noble one, City Lord, I was blind to have offended you, but today's auction was not intentionally manipulated by us. What he feared the most right now was that the City Lord would use this handsome cultivator as a scapegoat. If so, then their auction house would truly be beyond redemption. The crux of this matter was that there was no need to investigate at all. The result was completely up to the City Lord. As for this seemingly gentle and refined City Lord of Square Wave City, he had been ruthless and cruel for many years. This caused the auction house master to feel incomparable despair. Qin Yu frowned. He slowly said, City Lord Kong, I don't like to be involved in karma. Since we are participating in the auction, we should follow the rules of the auction. City Lord Kong sighed inwardly. They could consider themselves lucky. He never thought that this highness would actually be such a kind-hearted person. Of course, the City Lord didn't reveal any of this on the surface. He gently smiled and cupped his hands together. Young master is right. I originally planned to follow your rules. He turned his hand and a 7-colored spirit stone card appeared in his palm. Fellow Daoist Mao, there are 100 million spirit stones here. Please take a look. Not only was the auction house master not happy, but he became even more panic-stricken. If the City Lord reneged on his debt, then he would still have a chance to live. But if he really took these spirit stones, then all he could do was wait for his family to be exterminated in the future. Sir City Lord, this infinite token can be considered an apology from our auction house to this noble person. We cannot accept a single spirit stone. As for the Hu family, they should be happy that they were able to escape from this maelstrom. Would they still dare to spout nonsense? Even if there was trouble afterwards, it would be better to fall out with the Hu family than to be remembered by the City Lord. Qin Yu frowned. He didn't want to delay any longer. He directly said, let's go with 40 million spirit stones. You can rest assured that no one will come looking for trouble with you in the future. City Lord Kong smiled. If the young master asks you to accept it, then accept it. The auction house master's lips moved, but he didn't dare to say anything else. With a nervous expression, he received the 4 purple spirit stone cards that the city lord had taken out. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. City Lord Kong, I must thank you this time. You can report the matter of using spirit stones to the capital city and no one will make things difficult for you. Since the South Shine Nation's old ancestor had given him this status, he naturally wouldn't care about 40 million spirit stones. City Lord Kong smiled. With the young master's status, this is all within the scope of permission. I will just write a report and everything will be fine. He cupped his hands together. The infinite realm can open at any moment. Young master might as well give me a chance to entertain you so that I won't be disturbed by some small fry. Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. I'll have to trouble City Lord Kong. Soon, under Kong Mingxin's arrangements, Qin Yu entered Square Wave City and lived in a beautiful garden. After the steward of the Great Desolate Lake reported to headquarters and learned of what happened in the auction house, he immediately guessed Qin Yu's identity and hurried over to seek an audience. Qin Yu received him. The steward repeatedly apologized and offered up the ancient god's sword with both hands, begging him to take it back. But in the end, Qin Yu refused and told him to rest assured and accept it. Since he had taken 20 million spirit stones, he naturally couldn't take advantage of it. The steward had a bitter expression. With no other choice, he could only call White Fingfing's cell phone and let the young miss decide this matter. White Fingfing's first words were so aggrieved that she nearly cried. She said that her big brother Baoyu didn't love her and hadn't revealed his true appearance all this time. After spending a great deal of effort to appease her, White Fengfeng agreed to accept the ancient god's sword. But she requested that if Qin Yu had a chance in the future, he would definitely visit her. Qin Yu waved his hand and sent the Great Desolate Lake steward away. Then, he smiled. Although this White Fengfeng was a bit of a troublemaker, she still gave him a warm feeling. Perhaps if he had a chance in the future, he really would go and see her. But right now, the most important matter was to enter the infinite realm and find Ningling. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor clearly knew of Qin Yu's whereabouts and yet he didn't send anyone to disturb him. It seemed that everything was completely under his control. Towards this, Qin Yu sneered, happy to be at ease. 10 days later, as Qin Yu was quietly cultivating in his chamber, he suddenly felt a fluctuation from the infinite token in his chest. A smile lit up his face. It had finally opened. Chapter 374. Brilliant lights flashed in front of him, condensing into a space channel. Although he couldn't see the outside world, his intuition told him that this transmission speed was much faster than before. In several breaths of time, he reached his destination. Space violently twisted and Qin Yu's figure appeared. He vigilantly swept his eyes around and subconsciously frowned. The cultivators that were assigned to this entrance weren't too lucky. No one knew where the infinite realm truly was. Every time it opened, it would randomly form multiple entrances in the land of divinity and demons. The positions of these entrances didn't follow any rules at all. If one was lucky, they would appear in a desolate area. Besides cultivators that were sent here by tokens, no one would discover them. This was because even if someone sent a message, the entrances would only last for an hour. After sucking in the cultivator with the infinite token, they would vanish. But if one's luck was bad, the entrances would appear in densely populated areas. All the cultivators that were sent here would face great trouble. The special characteristic of the infinite token was that it couldn't be placed into any storage space. In other words, as long as one defeated or killed a cultivator holding the token, they could directly replace it. At Square Wave City, City Lord Kong knew that Qin Yu would soon enter the Infinite Realm. He couldn't guess his identity, but in order to be on good terms with him, he specially sent people to collect information and send it to Qin Yu. This information contained records of similar events. 3,000 years ago, when the Infinite Realm opened, one of the entrances was located in the skies above a county city of the Song Empire. Even though the entrances near the Infinite Realm didn't allow any Blue Sea Realm cultivators to fight for them, corpses still littered the land. In a short hour, several hundred divine souls had died on the spot. Every infinite token had changed hands more than once. The fates were extremely tragic. Qin Yu swept his eyes around. The entrance he was at was also located above a city. Luckily, although it was large, it hadn't reached the level of a county city, so the number of divine soul cultivators here should be limited. As Qin Yu was thinking this, his eyes suddenly turned icy cold. This was because at this moment, several icy cold auras locked onto him. Kill. Seize the infinite token. If you don't want to die, hand it over. 4 figures instantly approached. The one in the lead lifted a palm and slammed it down. Countless ripples stirred up in space, causing it to shake like a lake. These ripples contained an extremely formidable imprisoning strength that directly suppressed Qin Yu. He only has a 2nd-level divine soul cultivation. It looks like he's just lucky enough to obtain an infinite token. Hurry and kill him. If others are drawn here, things will be troublesome. The dagger-wielding cultivator's body instantly dispersed and disappeared. In the next instant, a cold aura descended from above. Qin Yu coldly snorted. His aura was like a rising volcano, instantly erupting. The spatial ripples imprisoning him collapsed and he punched out. Bang! The sneering cultivator's face paled. His body was like a ball as he was sent flying. A large hole was blasted open in his chest and his dagger flew far away. Shua, his soul appeared. He looked at Qin Yu with panic in his eyes and then fled in a panic. Not good, there's a problem. Damn it, he's a vicious character who pretends to be a pig to eat a tiger. Let's go. The remaining 3 people turned and fled. Qin Yu coldly snorted and didn't chase after them. Instead, he swept his icy eyes around. These 4 people wanted to kill him, so he naturally wouldn't be lenient in killing them. At a time like this, he had to display his strength so that the people watching in the dark wouldn't dare to act rashly. And indeed, as Qin Yu killed a 5th-level divine soul with a single punch, most of the gazes on him instantly faded away. But there were still some eyes that didn't leave him. Qin Yu frowned. He looked up and saw 3 figures rapidly flying towards him. After they stopped, the light faded away to reveal 2 men and 1 woman. The man in the middle was tall and burly, his body like a small mountain. He loudly said, "Fellow Daoist, you are indeed strong, but you are only 1 person and there are 3 of us. Hand over the infinite token and we will let you leave." Bang! The auras of these 3 people erupted at the same time. They were all 8th-level divine soul cultivators. Moreover, looking at the sharpness in their eyes, they should still be hiding their methods. This wasn't a county city and yet he still encountered 3 8th-level divine souls working together. Qin Yu was left speechless. In truth, this was a complete coincidence. The 3 people in front of him belonged to the same sect and had been sent here to escort a precious item. They just happened to run into the opening of the Infinite Realm. The 3 of them were overjoyed and immediately decided to seize the token. After all, although the Infinite Realm was dangerous, there were also countless lucky chances. Because there were only 3 of them, even though they weren't weak, they didn't dare to have any thoughts of attacking a group of people. They had killed 2 cultivators that were transmitted here and obtained 2 infinite tokens. Now, they were only missing 1. Qin Yu just happened to deliver himself to their doorstep. Although he wasn't weak, they were confident that if the three of them joined forces, they would be able to suppress him. They naturally wouldn't miss this chance. Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, the ruthless man on the left roared out, "Senior apprentice brother, why are you wasting words with him? Let's kill him and take the token." The large fellow nodded. "Since you won't hand it over, don't blame us if you lose your life. Attack!" He was the first to step forwards. He spread out his arms and the phantom of a mountain appeared above his head. A terrifying suppression came crashing down. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He had stepped into the divine soul realm and his soul could sense the rules of the world. Naturally, he knew the secrets of this boundary. Divine soul sensing, perceiving the rules, condensing supernatural powers, the spatial ripples from the cultivators that attacked him, and the mountain phantom above the large fellow's head, were all manifestations of the power of the rules. If it weren't for this, then how could a divine soul cultivator possibly roll over a nascent soul in terms of magic power? In terms of the rules, Qin Yu was still naive. He hadn't formed any supernatural powers of the rules, but his combat strength had already reached a degree where he could roll over these simple rules. This was what it meant to break through all methods with one strength. So at this time, facing the suppression of the mountain phantom above the large fellow's head, all he could do was lift his hand and punch out. The entire mountain phantom violently trembled. The mountainside caved in and the earthy yellow divine light wildly circulated, but it was still broken in the end. Kacha, cracks appeared, rapidly spreading in all directions. The large fellow's face paled and fear filled his eyes. Bang! The mountain phantom collapsed. This represented that his rules had been directly broken and the strength of the backlash affected his soul. With a pitiful scream, he lost his breath and fell to the ground. With a loud bang, a large house was smashed to pieces and everything for several miles collapsed. It could be seen from this that this cultivator's mortal body was incredibly strong and his weight was astonishing. Unfortunately, in terms of the soul, he was indeed a bit weak. The backlash shattered his soul and he died for good. "Senior apprentice brother." The ruthless cultivator cried out in grief. He howled as he rushed over. Bloody light erupted from his body, creating a horrifying scene. The ruthless cultivator punched out. Qin Yu coldly snorted and met it without dodging. Two fists collided in the air and there was the sound of breaking bones. "Ah!" As he screamed, the man's entire arm twisted like a fried dough twist. He tumbled to the ground, cutting the entire street in half. Fortunately, most of the ordinary people in the city had already fled. Otherwise, who knew how many people would have been killed by the shock waves of the battle alone? The female cultivator screamed, and a poisonous scorpion phantom appeared behind her. It opened its mouth and spat out a black poisonous mist. She turned around and rushed to the ground, picked up the heavily injured man, and quickly fled. Qin Yu avoided the poison fog. Killing intent surged in his eyes, but in the end he didn't chase after him. It wasn't that he had good intentions and held back twice, but that there were countless eyes staring at him. If he continued to chase after him, he would inevitably expose more of his strength. Before entering the infinite realm, this wasn't a good thing. He only wanted to find Ningling and didn't want to stir up any more trouble. Humph! Qin Yu took several steps forwards and landed in the city. Amidst the chaos, he found a tea stall on the side of the road. The water was still boiling hot and the tea leaves were scattered all over the table. Qin Yu picked up a teapot and began to brew some tea. In the two battles just now, he had already displayed a sufficiently powerful cultivation. There shouldn't be anyone who dared to have any ideas about attacking him. In fact, although Qin Yu's 2 consecutive battles had lasted for a short period of time, they had left many people secretly shaken. That large fellow that descended from the mountain shadow had an astonishing defensive ability. The rules should have an extremely strong weakening attribute, but he was actually killed by a backlash from breaking the rules with a single punch. His soul cultivation is indeed too poor, but that black-robed cultivator's strength is absolutely terrifying. This person's strength is astonishing. What he's revealed is that he has a peak divine soul combat strength, so he might be hiding something. If we can recruit him, he will be a great help to us. Hurry and get in touch with that person. As long as he can help me obtain the secret sword heart technique from the infinite realm, I will satisfy all of his conditions. Just as Yu drank a cup of tea, a cultivator quickly walked over. He smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist, please. I am from the county city's Wang family. My family's young master invites fellow Daoist to join us. As long as fellow Daoist agrees, we will immediately offer you 5 million spirit stones. Fellow Daoist will also have a share of the infinite realm's harvests. 5 million spirit stones in addition to a share of the harvests was a bit sincere. But Yu didn't enter the infinite realm to search for good fortune. So, he shook his head in refusal. The Wang family cultivator tried to persuade Yu several more times. But as he saw that Yu wasn't moved at all, he could only sigh and bid his farewells. Just as this person left, another old man walked over. His steps were shaky, as if he would fall over at any moment. He said in a hoarse voice, "Fellow Daoist, how are you? I am from the Fangtian family. I ask that you join us and venture into the infinite realm together." Yu's eyes flashed. He had looked through the information he had and gained some understanding of the infinite realm. This spatial fragment only allowed cultivators at the divine soul realm and below to enter and obtain good fortune. But, because there were many risks within the infinite realm, in order to prevent accidents from occurring when they sent out proud sons of heaven, influences with deep backgrounds would often send out guardians. These guardians were mostly old and no longer had the potential to make breakthroughs. But their cultivations were all at the extreme peak of divine soul. If they went all out, they could even erupt with strength that surpassed the limits of divine soul. Once they faced a life or death crisis, they would protect the proud sons of heaven no matter the cost. In order to obtain an infinite token, Yu's bidding price finally reached 94 million spirit stones. Although he only paid 40 million in the end, this was enough to prove just how precious the token was. This was why it was said that those that had the qualifications to send out guardians were all extremely powerful influences with deep backgrounds. Although Yu didn't know who the Fangtian family was, he could tell from their guardians that there were many people in their group and they were also tyrannically strong. If he really was a solitary master that entered the infinite realm to obtain lucky chances, then joining such a group would undoubtedly be a good choice. This was because the more powerful an influence was, the more they cared about their face. They wouldn't easily break their promises, so their safety was generally high. Unfortunately, this didn't appeal to Yu at all. So, he shook his head in refusal. The old man revealed a look of surprise but didn't say anything. He turned and left. The Fangtian family had their own dignity. Since they refused an invitation, they wouldn't ask a second time. Following that, 2 more groups sent out invitations to Yu, but they also returned without any results. At the same time, within the scope of the entire city, thunderous booms erupted from time to time. Massive swathes of buildings were swept up in terrifying strength and torn to pieces. The competition for the infinite tokens continued, and it became increasingly terrifying. This was because the 1-hour time limit was quickly approaching. Separated by a long street, there was a perfectly preserved restaurant in the midst of the ruins. There was a table of people sitting by the window on the 2nd floor. They emitted a terrifying aura, causing countless cultivators to make way for them. Entering the infinite realm alone is extremely risky. If this person refuses so many groups, it seems he is waiting for a better choice. If he can remain so calm, he must have something he can rely on. A young cultivator at the table slowly said. There were two people standing behind him, both of them middle-aged, their eyes shining with a sharp light. Let's go. Let's go take a look and see whether or not this black-robed brother is willing to join us. The young cultivator tossed down several spirit stones and then led his people downstairs. But he didn't know who would have the courage to collect their wine money. Cousin, although this person has a peak divine soul combat strength, he isn't worthy of you personally inviting him. How about I go instead? A beautiful female cultivator humphed. The young cultivator wore a purple gold crown on his head. He faintly smiled. Those with ability are usually arrogant. Since we want to invite him, we naturally need to show enough sincerity. Good, good, I want to see just what sort of ability cousin has that person you've taken a liking to. Soon, the group arrived outside the tea stall. Yu looked up, a dignified look in his eyes. There were 11 people in this group and each one of them had a strong cultivation. In particular, there were two middle-aged men. Their breaths were long and deep and their every movement gave off an invisible pressure. Besides them, there was also a white-haired old woman. She leaned on a walking stick and her aura was so weak that it was nearly impossible to sense her. But the feeling she gave off was the most terrifying feeling to Yu. 3 Tao protectors. The young cultivator with the purple gold crown smiled. Fellow Daoist, I wonder if you would be willing to join us. The harvests in the infinite realm will be distributed according to how much effort you put in. Yu laid down his teacup and stood up. I am used to being alone. Thank you for your kind intentions. For this group to personally invite him, it was worth it for him to stand up and return the greeting. You don't know what's good for you. My cousin inviting you is because he thinks highly of you. The beautiful female cultivator's eyes widened as she fiercely said. The young cultivator with the purple gold crown frowned and scolded, Shut up. Everyone has their own aspirations, so how can you force them? My cousin has been spoiled since childhood, so I ask fellow Daoist to forgive me if I have offended you. Yu shook his head. It's fine. If he attacked with his full strength, he could even fight a revered blue sea. Towards this little girl, he really couldn't bring himself to be angry. But his calm appearance nearly caused his cousin's lungs to explode with rage. She viciously glared at him. The cultivator with the purple gold crown said, The infinite realm is filled with dangers. If fellow Daoist travels alone, you must be careful. Just as he finished speaking, the vortex in the skies above the city suddenly released a suction force. This person faintly smiled. Fellow Daoist, we will be leaving first. Shwa, shwa, the 11 people shot up into the skies at the same time, vanishing into the vortex. Yu looked up at the vortex in the skies, a look of anticipation in his eyes. Ningling, I hope you will appear in the infinite realm. Shwa. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.